Chapter 1642. What's the plan? The members of the night raid were all eager, and their expectant eyes were fixed on Dustless, and they could no longer move away. Hey, this guy shouldn't be an old monster who has lived for hundreds of years, right? Tatsumi was jealous, but after thinking about it, he kept silent. He had to admit that compared with them, Dustless was more knowledgeable. Although he looked like he was 18 or 19 years old, his life experience was extremely rich. Wait, at this moment, Tatsumi suddenly thought of something and asked angrily, "Since you know that I'm not dead, why don't you rescue me? What if I'm killed? Is there a teammate like you?" "Sorry, my memory is not very good. I forgot for a while." Shrugging his shoulders, Dustless showed an innocent expression, which made Tatsumi angry. "Let's put that kind of little thing aside for a while. How are you going to solve the problem?" The night raid members interrupted and asked. They were not interested in Tatsumi's affairs. This kid was a jinx. His death brought a large number of soldiers. Then, the corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled into an arc as if his scheme had succeeded. He said coldly, "There's no doubt that these soldiers are used to defend the imperial capital. Now that she has mobilized them, it means that the imperial capital's defenses are very weak. We can take this opportunity to launch a sneak attack on the imperial capital." It's indeed a good opportunity to attack the imperial capital. Everyone was stunned, and their eyes were shining. Isdeth and her hunters came with a large number of soldiers, so the imperial capital's internal defense must be unusually empty. As for General Budo, he was killed by Dustless a long time ago. It's easy to say." Tatsumi snorted and said impolitely, "I advise you not to dream. Now we are surrounded by Isdeth. How can we attack the imperial capital? By flying." That's right." A group of night raid members showed a disappointed expression. Although it was suitable to attack the imperial capital, it was annoying that they were surrounded by Isdeth's army. They couldn't escape even if they had wings. How could they attack the imperial capital? "Don't worry about that." Dustless smiled mysteriously and confidently. "You didn't forget the battle during the day, did you? When I left the warlock of Flying Thunder God in the capital." Flying Thunder God warlock? The members of the night raid all revealed puzzled expressions. Their expressions were rather complicated. In front of Dustless, they were like children who had never seen the world. They simply could not understand what Dustless was talking about. Flying Thunder God warlock? What was that? Don't tell me you can teleport us to the imperial capital in an instant. That kind of thing does not exist, and there is no such taigu. Tatsumi muttered with an expression that said, "Don't try to fool everyone. You're really smart." Dustless stared at Tatsumi in astonishment and gave him a thumbs up. "TSK, TSK. Tatsumi, your IQ has increased once. You really guessed it this time. To some extent, the Flying Thunder God skill can be used for space transfer. Can you really do that kind of thing?" A group of members of the night raid were shocked by Dustless. They stared at Dustless with dry mouths and tongues. If they could do it, they could take this opportunity to attack the imperial capital, and the result would be very rich. Everyone's hands are held together. Dustless did not say much, but asked everyone to hold hands. Only Tatsumi stared at Dustless with his round eyes. He wanted to see what he would do. If you like to be abused by Isdeth so much, you can continue to wait. Staring at Tatsumi, who was indifferent, Dustless said casually, "Ace, Des." These two words seemed to contain a curse. Tatsumi's body twitched a few times, and immediately his face was full of coldness. He quickly pulled Rabbik's right hand. "So let's start." Seeing that everyone was holding hands, the chakra in Dustless's body erupted. Just a thought, the world in front of everyone changed. Kacha! The void in front of them was distorted and shattered like a mirror. Then Dustless and others were sucked into this space. "It's so bright." Suddenly, a large white light swept in front of them. The members of the night raid subconsciously closed their eyes. The dazzling light was close to the scorching sun. After a while, when everyone opened their eyes again, the world in front of them was no longer the night raid base that was bombarded, but is God's blessing, which God Dustless believes in is so merciful. He can also fulfill other people's wishes. I also want to be his believer. Looking around the environment, Tatsumi said something ridiculous. The surrounding situation was completely different from before. It was also a ruin. Looking around, it was the competition venue where they fought with Isteth's Jaegers before. There was no doubt that they were definitely in the imperial capital at this moment. Long story short, now I order everyone to attack the palace immediately as the acting boss and try to kill Minister Onesta. Akim didn't care about the shock and quickly ordered everyone to attack the palace. And at this moment, in another direction, Isteth was very depressed, looking at the night raid base that was reduced to ruins. After waiting for a long time, she didn't see any counterattack from the night raid. They were all dead, as if they were bombarded to death by artillery. It seems that something is wrong. You guys go in and search. A few minutes later, Isteth found that the situation was a bit abnormal. She ordered to stop the bombardment and sent the Jaegers to explore the ruins of the night raid base. About half an hour later, she got an answer that made her restless. Chapter 1643. What They All Ran Away. Hearing the report of several members of the Jaegers, Isteth only felt that the world in front of her eyes was dark, and her confidence collapsed instantly. Her cold eyes suddenly fell on Will's head. "Don't look at me." Finding that Isteth looked at him like a hungry wolf, Will wanted to cry, but had no tears, so he had to bite the bullet. "I really saw Tatsumi running here at that time, and I can be sure that this is the base of the night raid. Although the bombardment just now has razed their base to the ground, we can still see some clues from the ruins. There is no doubt that this is the base of the night raid. But where are the people?" Isteth's words hit the nail on the head, making Will speechless. That, Miss Isteth, the people of the night raid, may have run away in advance. Shrinking his neck, Will stared at Isteth with some fear. Boom, boom, boom. Isteth's body burst out a powerful ice ripple, and the ground around her condensed a layer of solid ice in an instant, and the temperature suddenly dropped below zero. So strong. The members of the Jaegers were all horrified, and their knees were involuntarily bent. They were overwhelmed by Isteth's strong breath, and they were in danger of suffocation at any time. Looking at the whole world, only Dustless could suppress her now. For others, Isteth was the real god. "Will, I mobilized a lot of people, but you finally told me that they ran away." Isteth's tone was as cold as a knife, and Will was stung all over. "Damn Tatsumi." Will was terrified, and he cursed Tatsumi, who dug a hole millions of times in his heart. He gritted his teeth and replied, "Miss Isteth, this has nothing to do with me. I will just shut up." She shouted at Will, and the raging in Isteth's eyes could not be concealed. But after a few seconds, she finally loosened her clenched fists. She knew that the more strange the situation was, the more she had to keep calm. "What do you think Dustless went?" Isteth asked in a low voice, but in fact, she already had the answer in her heart. Probably in the imperial capital, the members of the night raid looked at each other and said at the same time, the night raid had only one goal from the beginning to the end, to overthrow the decadent empire. "It's the same as I imagined, hateful. I've been completely tricked." Isteth gritted her teeth. Unconsciously, she was tricked by Dustless once, and her carefully prepared plan was completely aborted. Speed up and return to the imperial capital. With a sigh of disappointment, Isteth had thought of the tragedy of the imperial capital. If it was in normal times, there were still soldiers guarding the imperial capital. But at this moment, she brought out a large number of elite soldiers, and the imperial capital was in danger. At this moment, inside the imperial palace, boom, 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 sharp explosions rang out incessantly, filling the vast sky. The usually sacred palace was now ablaze with flames, and a large number of soldiers fell into pools of blood. Those guys are really ruthless. Dustless lazily wandered back and forth in the imperial palace. After thinking for quite a while, he still couldn't find the trace of that damned minister and the young emperor. Given the temperament of Minister Ernest, they might have long escaped with the emperor. At the same time, in a very special room. "Is this Taigu?" Staring at the weapons of various strange monsters in the house, Dustless's mind waned. After a few glances, He turned his head and left. Taiga was useless, dustless. Did you find Minister Ernesto? As soon as he walked out of the room, full of Taigu, Akame and others swarmed in. When they saw the Taigu in the room, they were very excited. Dustless could reach the state of indifference, but others were all robbers, and all the Taiga were robbed. They are not in the Imperial Palace. Dustless heard the words and shook his head gently, indicating that Akame and others did not need to waste their efforts. I'm afraid that they have already died. Just now, I received accurate information from a few guards. Minister Ernest and his son Sheila have mysteriously disappeared with the Emperor. Her eyes were dim. Akame was very disappointed. It was a rare good opportunity, but Ernest ran away. Shira? Thinking about this character carefully, Dustless suddenly waved his hand and said, "Don't look for him. I know that's Shira." Although this kid's strength is not worth mentioning, his ability is not bad. I remember that he can teleport people to other places. And, looking around, Dustless whispered, "We have been completely surrounded, and we have no time to chase the Emperor. Minister Ernest and his perverted son are really troublesome." When they looked around, they would be surprised to find that there were a large number of dangerous species in the ruins of the Imperial Palace. Ouch! These monsters made a sharp roar, and disgusting saliva fell from their mouths. Their bodies were ferocious and strong, and their appearance was similar to that of humans, and there were more than one or two of them. Looking around, there were more than hundreds of dangerous species. These dangerous species are a bit strange. Akame and other members of the Night Raid frowned. It was the first time to find dangerous species whose appearance and body were similar to that of humans. It was a fantastic story. They are actually all human beings, and they're all the research objects of Dr. Fashion. Their appearance is all because of Dr. Fashion. The people who released them are probably the minister and his son, and they want to destroy us with this. Dustless gently explained, if these dangerous species ran to the street to make trouble, maybe they could destroy the entire imperial capital. That damned father and son have been caught by me, and I must tear them into pieces. Leonai was furious. The bones in her hands were cracking, and she looked like she hated evil, as if she could not wait to tear the disgusting father and son apart their bones. Among the members of the Night Raid, only Dustless could remain calm. After all, he had experienced too many things, not to mention such a small matter. He had even seen people who were crazier than Minister Ernest. Chapter 1644. Although they were killers, in the final analysis, the essence of human beings had not changed. Ow, ow. The heart-wrenching screams came into the ears. Looking closely, these dangerous humanoid species were like wildcats that smelled blood, rushing to be the first to come. Yasukani no Magatama. Hordes of destructive radiance whizzed out, shattering those who had overestimated themselves. The ferocious light bullets pierced through all of these humanoid, dangerous species. He was beaten so badly that he looked like a sieve. Clang, 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 clang. The other idioms of the night attack did not talk nonsense. Those who should pull out the sword pulled out the sword, and those who should use the knife went on the knife. The dangerous species had a great deterrent to ordinary humans, and the night attack had little effect on them. Time flew by, and in a blink of an eye, 4 or 5 hours had passed. When his death rushed back to the imperial capital with a group of people, the scene of the palace was terrible. Are the Emperor and Minister Ernest dead? Looking at the burning palace in front of her, Isteth asked calmly without changing her expression. The members of the Jaeger Special Police looked at each other, and they did not know how to answer. Of course not dead. At this moment, the ground suddenly swept a purple light, and a glowing Tai Chi diagram emerged. Minister Ernest and his son Shira, including the young emperor, came into view. Minister Ernest, who had just escaped from death, saw the ruined palace and yelled, "Generalist Death, your performance is disappointing. You were 100% sure that you could defeat the night attack, so I allowed you to take away the troops guarding the imperial capital. Now the imperial capital was attacked by the night attack, and the palace has completely collapsed. You have to take full responsibility for this. The minister is right. I was almost killed by you. If it weren't for the minister's son's help, what you see may be a headless corpse. The emperor also followed Minister Ernest's words. Your Majesty has allowed me to form a special force to deal with the night attack. The dark-skinned young man, standing on the left side of the emperor, laughed twice and immediately raised his arm. General Isteth, my name is Shira, and we will be colleagues from now on. Isteth just snorted and refused to shake hands with Sheila. At the same time, she finally understood why General Budo hated this pair of teachers so much. At the same time, in another direction, Dustless and the others had already returned to their original base. The scene that greeted them was too horrible to look at. The base that they had raided during the night had been completely reduced to ruins that no one cared about. In the future, I'll have to live in the open. Lubbock sighed and leaned against the big tree. He hated his death in his heart. All in all, this place is not suitable for a base. I'm afraid that after his death knew that she was fooled, she will come here again after a while. Let's change to another place. Dustless knew his death's temperament quite well. He knew her very well. Where is mine? Chitong's eyes swept around and frowned. It seemed that from the beginning, mine suddenly disappeared like evaporating from the world. When Dustless heard the words and was about to use observation hockey to search for mine, the embarrassed voice came out from the dense forest behind him. Cough. I'm here. Sorry, my stomach suddenly felt uncomfortable. I just want to solve it. Mine carried Nangong Taigu and ran out of the forest. Her tone was very embarrassed. Your stomach felt uncomfortable? Dustless heard the words and carefully examined mine for a moment. He immediately said, softly without changing his expression, it's really rare. I remember that you didn't eat for half a day. How can you feel uncomfortable? Yeah. Chitong also looked at mine strangely. Mine's face was unnatural, and she immediately said to Dustless angrily, you even doubt this kind of thing. Do you want me to take you to solve it personally? Quietly staring at mine for a long time, Dustless said faintly, forget it, I'm not so bored. Not everyone likes to tease people like you. After the voice fell, Dustless stared at mine with deep meaning. There was a different meaning in the depths of his eyes. It was very different from the way he looked at mine at ordinary times. The base was destroyed. Let's eat some fruits. She took out a few wild fruits. Mine smiled and said, I have all washed them. Other members of the night raid did not refuse when they heard the words. They took the tempting fruits and began to eat. About half an hour later, everyone fell to the ground inexplicably and fell asleep. A group of idiots. If you are so careless, you will be annihilated sooner or later. At this time, No, it was not mine anymore. The original mine changed into a woman with a more plump body. What came into view was a long-haired, beautiful girl wearing headphones, wearing a British-style uniform, with a helpless, melancholy smile on her face and candy in her mouth. She looked like a greedy cat. This person was Chelsea, who disguised as mine. Annihilated? Don't talk big there. A plain voice came. Dustless, who was also sleeping, suddenly stood up. Your ability is good. You could disguise as mine, and the appearance is exactly the same. To be honest, I was really surprised. However, there are too many loopholes in your disguise of mine. You didn't faint? Did you pretend deliberately? Chelsea was shocked after being stunned. At the same time, Dustless's sudden move shocked her. Chapter 1645. Swish, swish, swish. The light flashed. Dustless's body gradually lost its texture and disappeared without a sign. It was difficult for the naked eye to keep up with the moving speed. When he appeared again, Dustless had already appeared in front of Chelsea, and he also held a dagger with cold light. The blade was as cold as snow under the moonlight, and he pointed at Chelsea's throat mercilessly. What do you want to do? Chelsea's eyes flashed with panic, and she could not help but step back a few steps. Her eyes were a little scared. When she assassinated others before, this situation had never happened. I have no malice. Throwing the dagger aside, Dustless looked up at the depth of the void and calmly said, I just want to remind you that everyone is different. You have too many flaws. If you are so careless, you may die. In the original book, Chelsea was killed by Kurome because she was careless and treated Kurome as an ordinary person. The ending was even more tragic. She was killed, and she didn't even have a whole body. You're quite observant, aren't you? You can even see through my flaws. Chelsea noticed that Dustless was not hostile, and her perturbed heart finally calmed down. She immediately showed a doubtful expression. You seem to have recognized that I am not mine early. Of course, although your Taigu ability is good, you can only disguise as a person's basic appearance. It is impossible to imitate mine's temperament, the tone of speaking, including the style of the office. Dustless explained patiently. Mine will not be as gentle as you. She is very proud. Although you can pretend to be mine, you are just a walking dead with no charm. It seems to be reasonable. Chelsea nodded thoughtfully after hearing the words, but she did not know mine very well, so she was full of flaws and was seen through by Dustless. I will not let you see through it next time. Chelsea looked at Dustless's eyes that seemed to know everything, and she was quite jealous. She swore that she would teach Dustless a lesson next time. Chelsea, how do you feel? Night raids aren't as bad as you think. Although they are young, they have carried out countless missions. My subordinates are very outstanding. The familiar and proud laughter came from the dark forest. Turning around, it was the boss Najenda. I reluctantly approved of him. Chelsea pointed at Dustless and then looked around, taking in the sleeping people of the night raid. She shook her head and denied. As for them, they are still a little immature as assassins. Damn it, you actually dare to disguise yourself as Dustless to trick me. Behind the boss Najinda, mine, whose face was red, stomped her feet angrily. She was so angry that she wanted to beat Chelsea up. If Najinda was not present, perhaps mine's pumpkin would have aimed at Chelsea. These two fellows are indeed natural enemies. Dustless's face was indescribably strange when he heard the words. He looked at Chelsea with some confusion. He did not expect that she could disguise herself as him. And looking at the current situation, it seemed that she also succeeded in fooling mine once. Era, you don't need to care about that kind of little thing. You can rest assured that I will keep it secret for you. Dustless gave a malicious look to mine, and then Chelsea glanced at Dustless without changing her expression. Then she smiled at mine meaningfully. These two people are really boring. They involve me for no reason. Looking at mine's angry expression and Chelsea's proud look, Dustless knew that he was innocent. Dustless could not say much about this. He did not like to meddle in other people's business. He just looked at the taiga behind Agenda lazily. It seems that there is no special place. After peeking a few times, Dustless immediately labeled him as an ordinary person. Don't you want to know what I did in disguise as you? Noticing that Dustless had nothing to do, Chelsea's action showed that she approached him. You? Dustless glanced at the girl with a very strange look. He knew that the character of this girl was extremely evil. He was speechless suddenly. You wouldn't use my appearance to peep at mine going to the toilet, right? After the voice fell, Dustless stared at Chelsea intently. He thought that this girl would simply deny it. Unexpectedly, she just smiled ambiguously and said, You are really smart. You deserve to be recognized by me. The answer is very close. Fuck. Dustless's expression twitched when he heard the words. He could finally understand the reason why mine and Chelsea often quarreled with each other. It was really miserable to have such a weird teammate. It was okay to trap the enemy, but it was really too bad to pretend to trap the enemy. You seem to be in big trouble. Najinda looked at the ruins of the night raid base and frowned. The air was still filled with the thick smell of gunpowder that had not yet dissipated. Looking at the scorched earth around, it was obviously the tragedy caused by the bombardment of firearms, such as cannons, and the range was still extremely vast. Najinda had vaguely guessed what had happened. Was the base invaded? Isdeth can actually find here. She is really capable. Taking a smoke, Najinda looked dignified. Even if he had overestimated her ability, now, according to this situation, it seemed that he still underestimated Isdeth's ability. This has nothing to do with Isdeth. It was our own people who led her here. Dustless smiled and looked at Tatsumi, who was sleeping. Not only him, but everyone was sleeping. The fruit that Chelsea had just sent was filled with sleeping pills and other drugs. Everyone was sleeping soundly. Taking advantage of such a good opportunity, Dustless added oil and vinegar to Tatsumi's fire. Najenda was furious after hearing this. Regardless of what happened, she ordered Susanoo to build a confinement room and lock Tatsumi up for 3 days. She also cut off his water and food supply. Tatsumi was completely cheated. Chapter 1646. 5 days later, Tatsumi, who was confined, secretly scolded his bad luck. He was inexplicably taken to confinement by the boss, even there was no basic reason to persuade him. Tatsumi was exhausted when he thought about it, and he was full of hesitation about his future life. On the day when he was out of the confinement room, he saw Dustless's wicked smile. Tatsumi knew that the culprit who framed him was probably Dustless. Forget it. Unlike the past, Tatsumi was relieved this time. Being sick for a long time, he was often framed by Dustless. Tatsumi had been immune to it. After his ability to resist attacks became stronger, he didn't care about it. On the contrary, Dustless was depressed. After all, when he was bored, he usually framed Tatsumi to pass the time. Now, this kid was abused by himself every day. He actually trained a steel body, and his ability to resist attacks reached the peak. Dustless was somewhat surprised. In fact, it was worth mentioning that Susanoo just integrated into the night raid. He hooked up with Tatsumi. The relationship between the two people heated up quickly, almost like that of Bullet. Susanoo also very generously agreed to train him by Tatsumi. Tatsumi did not continue to bicker with Dustless, but ran to train silently. At this moment, in the conference room that was usually used for meetings, the smoke was lingering, the scene was slightly serious. Najenda meticulously stared at the information of the past few days. She was silent for a long time. Then she slowly said, "Sheila, the son of Minister Ernest? If this kid didn't make trouble, the minister and the emperor would be dead. It's a pity. It seems that he is also a difficult person." Dustless and others were silent. Although Sheila had no ability and his strength was general, his Taigu, Shangri-La, Dimensional Square, was a good ability. Its attack power was not strong, but belonged to the rare Taigu of the Space series. Its ability to escape was absolutely unparalleled in the world. The boss Najenda then continued. The two scumbags released the experimental body of Dr. Vogue. Now, the dangerous species in human form are destroying everywhere. Our next task is to eliminate these dangerous species. Isn't there Isthetha's hunter? Dustless asked first. This was Isthetha's accusation. What did it have to do with the killers? He always felt that Najenda was too nosy. You may not know, but Isthetha has been dismissed. With a satisfied and cheerful smile on her face, Najenda said something surprising. The incident a few days ago, you made too much trouble, burning the palace, so that the ministers and the emperor were dissatisfied with Isthetha. Now Isthetha has been removed from her position. Not to mention, her hunter has also been neglected. No wonder the boss wants to deal with those dangerous species. It's impossible to count on the imperial capital to deal with them. It's already a blessing if they don't release those dangerous species from the Fashion Research Institute. Dustless heard the words and immediately frowned. However, removing the position of Isthetha can't solve anything. According to her nature, she will continue to lead the hunter to fight against us. By the way, since Isthetha has been removed, who is responsible for the defense of the imperial capital now? At present, the task of guarding the imperial capital is taken by Sheila, the biological son of Minister Onesta. He replaced the original position of Isthetha. Now he is responsible for all the defense of the imperial capital. Najenda spat out the smoke, and her expression was a little relaxed. Compared with Isthetha, Sheila was also very troublesome, but compared with Isthetha, he was insignificant. This was also a blessing in the misfortune. Isthetha caused the imperial capital to be breached, and the morale of the imperial soldiers was deeply affected. During this time, many soldiers surrendered directly, and many people surrendered to the Revolutionary Army. All aspects of the border have made breakthroughs in close combat, and the final battle with the Empire is close at hand. Najenda shouted with her arms raised, as if she was injected with chicken blood. Ow, ow! The sharp roar of the beast suddenly came from a distance. Dustless and others rushed out of the window. A large number of various beasts and dangerous species were screaming to the sky. In order to avoid the entanglement of the hunter, the boss Najinda decided to take a risk and place the new base of the night raid in the Valley of the Wilderness. There were few people here, and there were dangerous species running rampant. It was the best choice for the base. Tatsumi and Susanu seemed to be training. How did they let this group of dangerous species run over? Akame asked with a puzzled face. It is indeed a bit strange. With the strength of Susang, it is enough to easily solve these invading dangerous species. Leonette was also talking to herself blankly. This is very simple. Dustless spread his hands out and said scornfully, "Such childish behavior. You all still can't tell? This is obviously intentional. Probably Susanu wants us to see the strength of Tatsumi. He is asked to train like a devil every day, and his strength is estimated to have improved a lot. It's not as ridiculous as he said." Chelsea had candy in her mouth, and she also felt that this approach was very naive. If she wanted to show her ability, she could show her strength in the mission. There was no need to be so troublesome. Dustless smiled disapprovingly and said with great certainty, "If I didn't guess wrong, the savior Tatsumi will soon appear and crush these insects. If you don't believe it, open your eyes and see clearly." Ow, ow, ow. After a while, Tatsumi wearing haunted fell from the sky, like a god of war blocking in front of a group of various beasts. Am I right? Dustless winked at Akame, and others, and he looked very arrogant. Chapter 1647. The members of the Night Raid were not surprised by Dustless's prediction. This kind of thing happened a lot. Predicting the future is one of the many abilities of Dustless, and it is an extremely accurate one. There are few deviations. Shoo, shoo, shoo. The next scene was exactly the same as Dustless's guess. Tatsumi was like a wolf in a flock of sheep. After Susanu's training, and because he was often destroyed, he was now much stronger than Tatsumi in the original work. After all, there was no Dustless in the original work, and now the world was chaotic because of the appearance of Dustless. Tatsumi was often ridiculed as weak as a chicken, so this guy worked very hard to improve his strength. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. After a while, the situation was one-sided. The beasts were slaughtered by Tatsumi. The scene was quite shocking, and the corpses were almost piled up like a mountain. Tatsumi has become a lot stronger. Leone drank a big mouthful of beer happily. After the carving of Bullet and Susanu, Tatsumi was the opposite of a young boy at the beginning. Others nodded slightly, and Dustless was not interested in other people who reluctantly recognized Tatsumi's strength. Boring. Lying lazily on the table. In Dustless's view, Tatsumi's only advantage was his ability to resist attacks, and Susanu was better than him at washing and cooking. Tatsumi is at least your companion. You should be more optimistic. Perceiving Dustless's dispirited look, Chelsea was speechless. My impression of Tatsumi has changed slightly. He is not bad, at least in terms of strength. He seems quite reliable now. Do you think he is reliable? Dustless heard the words and snorted contemptuously. That kid, I can slap him until he can't tell the east from the west. Boom! At the same time, Tatsumi suddenly broke the door and stared at Wu Chun fiercely. I heard what you said just now. You want to kill me with one slap? I don't accept it. This guy. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Chelsea subconsciously. He saw that there was an unconcealable arc on this fellow's lips. She was extremely cunning and sinister. You did it on purpose, didn't you? Dustless whispered into Chelsea's ear. Chelsea immediately shook her head and denied it. No matter what, we are companions. Why would I cheat my teammates? I'm not you. Chelsea shrugged with an expression that said it had nothing to do with me. This guy, Dustless blinked. He could tell that Chelsea had done it on purpose. I can slap you away. No, I can slap you away with one finger. What's wrong with that? Witnessing the valiant Tatsumi, Dustless asked plainly after drinking a glass of water. If you have the guts, let's fight one-on-one. Tatsumi snorted. Although he did not think that he was Dustless's opponent, It was not as exaggerated as what Dustless said. He would not be casually slapped by a finger. Challenge me? Your wings have hardened. Wu Chen realized that he seemed to have underestimated Tatsumi. This guy didn't even dare to challenge him. Usually, when he bumped into Tatsumi, he would avoid him. Since you want to test your strength, I have no problem with it. You can ask the boss. She is weak and allows us to have a private duel. I don't care. Dustless closed his eyes and said comfortably, Boss. Tatsumi immediately looked at Najinda with a hint of help. Huh. It doesn't matter if we have a duel, but we must stop. The boss unexpectedly agreed to Tatsumi's condition. Strange. The members of the night raid looked at each other. Usually, the boss had always strictly prohibited this kind of thing. After all, it was a duel. It also meant that there was a winner and a loser. As a result, it may hurt the trust between the members. Tatsumi is an exception. Najinda smiled and said nothing. The more oppressive Tatsumi was, the greater the room for improvement. It was best to let Dustless destroy Tatsumi. In the open space outside the base, Dustless and Tatsumi were 15 meters apart. Remember, stop. The boss Najinda took a deep breath and immediately shouted, Start now. Finally, I can have a fair duel with this guy. Looking at Dustless, Tatsumi, who was wearing the haunted armor, was very excited. On this day, he had been dreaming for a long time. Huh. Tatsumi then took a deep breath and suddenly disappeared. Tatsumi is transparent? He is more skilled than before. His aura completely disappeared. Tatsumi's sense of existence disappeared. Dustless is in trouble. A group of members of the night raid gossiped and discussed. They were quite surprised by Tatsumi's progress. This kid had worked a lot recently, but his strength had improved. Sure enough, everyone didn't find me, and this guy didn't find me. Tatsumi was quite excited. He was close to Dustless, only a few steps away, and Dustless was still looking around, seemingly looking for Tatsumi's trace. It's time for revenge. With a shout in his heart, Tatsumi raised his fist and hit Dustless's face. The face that was more handsome than his own was too annoying in Tatsumi's eyes. Idiot! Wu Chen's face was blank, and the corners of his mouth suddenly swept up a scheming arc, and he whispered, Armament hockey hardening. Bang, bang, bang. A dull explosion sounded out of thin air, and Tatsumi's whole body trembled fiercely. He hit Dustless's body with all his strength, but he was shaken. It hurts. Even with the protection of the armor, Tatsumi roared in pain. He felt that his right hand was about to be crippled. He looked at Dustless, who was motionless and unharmed. His dignity was shattered into pieces. He hit the target with all his strength. The enemy was fine, but his right arm was almost scrapped, and the pain was self-evident. Chapter 1648. Even so, the physical pain was far less than the mental torture. In order to surpass Dustless, Tatsumi worked hard every day and paid a lot of price. But now when he punched Dustless, the feeling was no different from punching a meteorite. Dustless was not hurt at all. Not even a trace was left. It turned out that someone attacked me. It hurts. After a while, Dustless pretended to be surprised and screamed, giving Tatsumi face. If he looked like he was fine, then this kid would be too aggrieved. This acting is too bad. A group of night raid members couldn't stand it anymore. Someone punched you, and you only felt pain after more than 10 seconds. This is too fake. Acting should at least be at the level of a professional actor. You can feel pain? Could it be that my fist worked? Tatsumi was very excited when he saw it. Although Dustless just snorted twice, and his expression didn't look like he was in pain, Tatsumi was still excited. Human beings are emotional creatures. Once they are excited, they will inevitably be full of flaws. This is the case for Tatsumi at the moment. Tatsumi, be careful. Your transparency is lifted. Susanoo quickly reminded loudly. Tatsumi, who seemed to be in a daze, was still immersed in joy and did not realize the coming of the crisis. Phew! At this moment, Tatsumi's vision suddenly darkened, and he also recovered from the surprise. It was okay if he didn't look, but when he looked closely, he suddenly panicked. What came to him was a big foot. Boom! With a muffled sound, Tatsumi was instantly knocked back more than 10 meters away. This kick was merciless, and the armor on Tatsumi's face was suddenly broken, revealing a young face. Even because of the excessive strength, his nose was slightly sunken and red and swollen. His nose was bleeding profusely. "Bastard! Why are you so ruthless?" Tatsumi gritted his teeth in pain and shouted angrily. "The boss said to stop. You did too much. I didn't leave any scars on you. Scratches are inevitable. There's no need to be so concerned about it," Dustless said casually, and he turned into a golden light and instantly appeared behind Tatsumi. He recalled the scene of Kakashi playing Uzumaki Naruto in Naruto, in Naruto Naruto, in Naruto Naruto, in Naruto. Ninjutsu Millennium Death. Dustless took out the wooden stick that he had prepared in advance and unceremoniously stabbed it into the depths of Tatsumi's soul. "Ouch! Damn bastard! I'm going to curse you to hell. How could you think of such a sinister move?" Tatsumi's screams resounded through the sky. Tatsumi's screams were creepy. The members of the night raid looked at the place where Tatsumi was attacked. How terrifying! Lubbock felt cold all over and felt that it was necessary to keep a distance from Dustless. The most important thing was that he must not offend Dustless. Maybe what happened to Tatsumi would happen to him. Shameless. The female members of the night raid blushed, and Tatsumi, who was rolling on the ground in pain, could not bear to look at them. Enough. Glancing at the miserable Tatsumi, the boss Najinda gave a look of pity. Obviously, he knew that he was not the opponent, but he still provoked Dustless. It was completely self-inflicted. "That's it for today. I have a task for everyone to complete." Calling the members of the night raid to her side, Najinda explained, "Eliminate all the dangerous species released by Shira. You must kill them all. Due to the danger of this task, everyone is dispatched. Although his death has been dismissed, she is still very active recently, and she may encounter the minister's son, Shira. Everyone must be careful." As for Tatsumi, staring at Tatsumi, who was rolling on the ground and crying, the boss Najinda did not expect him to join them. In this state, she was afraid that he would only drag them down. At night, the sky was getting late, and the sky was full of beautiful stars. If the sound of bones being broken in the forest was ignored, the scenery was even more beautiful and harmonious. Ouch! The humanoid, dangerous species with blood moved aimlessly in the forest. Many individuals had blood on their mouths. Several nearby villages were slaughtered by them, and all human beings were swallowed alive like food. Ladies Death, the minister has relieved us of our duties. Why did he send us a task? The members of the Jaegers asked inexplicably. The person who spoke was Kirom. The old guy knows my temperament. He knows that it is useless to relieve me of my duties because I will do the night raid, so he gave me a task out of boredom. The old guy is too self-righteous. Other members of the Jaegers were slaughtering the dangerous species. Kirom followed Isdeath herself to kill all the dangerous species. There was no need for so many people to participate. I heard that the minister's son, Shira, also took action this time. Kirom was full of doubts. There was news that pointed out that the minister's axe released the dangerous species in the Dr. S. Fashion Research Institute. This has nothing to do with us. My task is just to kill the guys of the night raid. Isdeth's eyes were cold. She sneered at the little Shira. That kind of scum was not enough for her eyes. For Isdeth, Shira was just a small character who could be defeated by raising her hand. She didn't even need to do it herself. Kirom could almost kill Shira. At the same time, the people of the night raid also quickly arrived. The members of both sides rushed in the same direction and were about to meet. It was that the situation was extremely strange this time. These dangerous species in human form were like ants smelling honey. They all gathered in one place strangely. Chapter 1649. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. On a flat mountaintop surrounded by cliffs, a large number of dangerous species gathered here. The members of the night raid were also scattered around to hunt these dangerous species that looked similar to humans. Seriously, Dustless's gaze slowly spread out, taking in the surrounding environment. About 100 meters away, there was a dark and terrifying cave from which came the hysterical roars of beasts. It seems to be there. He opened the map and glanced at it casually, and then glanced at the dark depths of the cave. Although there were some differences, there was no doubt that this was the research base of Dr. Fashion. As for the source of the blueprint, it was obtained by the Boston Agenda from the Revolutionary Army. Let's settle this quickly and go home. Wu Chan stretched his body, and the fatigue that went deep into the soul swept his whole body. Wu Chen yawned lazily. When he was about to enter the cave to eliminate the dangerous species around, there was a sudden change. Hum, hum, hum. The strange cry of a beast descended from the sky, echoing throughout the vast sky. Looking up at the sky, one could see that it was actually a ferocious-looking super-large bird. However, this was not the main point. Although flying dangerous species were somewhat rare, Wu Chun caught sight of other figures on the back of the dangerous species of birds. Long hair fluttered in the wind, and the water-blue elegant hair fluttered in the wind. Everything was visible at a glance. It can't be her, right? In his mind, a voluptuous and sexy figure suddenly flashed past. Her delicate facial features were exquisite like white jade, and she was like a peerless beauty that had walked out of a painting. Her exposed white skin caused one's imagination to run wild. Swish, swish. That figure suddenly fell, and a tight-fitting leather suit came into view. Her figure was tightly bound, and her slender white legs were completely exposed. Sure enough, it's his death. No wonder her right eye is jumping around today. Enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road. Dustless sighed and retracted his sight. On second thought, the person who met his death here in the original work was Tatsumi, but now it was him. Dustless sighed with emotion. Some things were destined by the heavens. Boom, boom, boom. The black shadow landed on the ground, and the ground shook violently. A large amount of dust and smoke flew up. Even those dangerous species that had no consciousness were frightened by this huge tremor and fled in all directions. Today, I'll get rid of all of you dangerous species. I didn't expect you to be here. Seems like we're fated. Isteth glanced around and suddenly found the thin Dustless. Her pupils suddenly flashed a raging light. That was the excitement of a wild beast meeting an evenly matched opponent. It was a crazy possessiveness. The scarlet, demonic light in his eyes was an unprecedented excitement. The way this guy looks at me is not right. There were some goosebumps on his body. Thinking of his death as unique interest, Dustless felt cold. There's no grudge between us. You've been dismissed. Dustless was the first to speak. There is no distinction between tasks in the contest between the strong. A lot of light appeared in Isteth's hand, and a huge ice blade was condensed in an instant. You are no match for me. Dustless shook his head and opened his mouth. When he was about to continue to speak, a very discordant voice came from the cave full of dangerous species. Huh. You two, if strong people like you fight, the capital may be affected, so please disappear from this world, okay? Wu Chun and Isteth were stunned at the same time. They looked towards the direction of the arrogant voice. A young man with dark skin and a strong body came into view. There was a cross mark on his nose, which was very conspicuous. Shira. Dustless and Isteth spoke at the same time, and the two frowned tacitly. The unexpected guest who suddenly appeared was the son of Minister Onesta, Shira. Something's wrong. How can this guy appear here? After a short loss, Dustless whispered secretly, Coincidence? There is no such coincidence in this world. This guy clearly ambushed in advance. Did this guy already know that I would appear here? Looking at the map in his hand, Dustless pondered for a moment and said bluntly, Naginda's map should be made by you, right? Yes. Shira nodded proudly and stared at his death like a villain. His tone was raised several times, and he said proudly, including the drawings in the hands of General Death, they were also provided by me. I intend to deceive all of you night raid and hunters here, and then let all of you disappear. However, the plan seems to have some changes. I didn't expect only you two in the end. Who gave you the courage to do this? Isdeth said with a murderous look, and her long hair was standing up. Who allowed me to do this? Isdeth, are you an idiot? The old guy naturally acquiesced in this kind of thing. Shira curled his lips with great disdain. You have been abandoned, Miss Isdeth. Dustless glanced at Isdeth, who had a cold face, and smiled gloatingly. He also understood Onesta's plan to use the map to attract all of the night raid and wipe them out in one fell swoop. As for why even Isdeth had to be eliminated, this was even simpler. Without the threat of the night raid, Isdeth and her hunters had no value to exist. I am very curious. How do you wipe us out? Just based on those fancy moves of yours? Touching his chin, Dustless asked curiously, and you can't kill us both. Minister Onesta's end is even more miserable. Not only he offended the night raid, but he also trapped Isdeth. Minister, the old guy actually dares to plot against me. I will definitely let him taste the most ferocious torture in the world. Isdeth screamed with cold light in her eyes. She was like a dying beast, and her anger was rolling. Did I say that I want to kill you? I just want you to disappear from this world. Shira laughed sinisterly and did not hesitate to release the Taigu, Shangri-La, dimensional matrix. He knew that he was not the opponent of Isdeth and Dustless, so he just sent them to the edge of the universe. Chapter 1650. Buzzing. At this time, the ground shook slightly, and then the purple demon light shone. A Tai Chi pattern appeared quietly, and the surrounding space began to distort. This good-for-nothing is quite good. Looking around, Dustless stared at Sheila's Taigu with interest. Shangri-La, dimensional matrix. Although the ability was not good, it was also good. It was the best among the Taigu. Good for nothing. Grease heard the words, and his face jumped a few times. He sneered and said, You two disappear together. Even if you die, someone will accompany you. Am I very kind? If you have any last words to thank me, say it quickly. When the voice fell, Sheila stared at Dustless and Isdeth, trying to catch a trace of fear from their faces. Are you an idiot? Have you graduated from kindergarten? This was what Dustless said. Is your head broken by the door? If so, I don't mind torturing you. Maybe I can restore your broken worldview again. This was Isdeth's sarcasm. You two have guts. Sheila almost vomited blood when she heard this. She wanted to slap herself a few times. Why did she have to waste her time talking to such a stubborn person? She was too stupid. Disappear. She stared at the two people fiercely. The purple light was dazzling to the extreme. Then there was a ripple in the void. Isdeth and Dustless both disappeared. In a strange space, it was dead silent. Looking up, it was dark all around. It was bottomless. It was quiet like stagnant water. There was no object. There were only two people in the whole world, Dustless and Isdeth. What is this place? Isdeth looked at the surrounding environment blankly. She suddenly felt that it was very difficult to breathe. This should be another dimension, a world without air. The kid transferred us here. I'm afraid we can't go back. What would happen to people without oxygen? There was no doubt that they would die. Damn it. Isdeth's face was pale. She did not expect that she would fall into Sheila's hands. It was definitely a shame for her to be plotted by this kind of insect. Are we going to wait for death here? Isdeth smiled bitterly. Her body was different from ordinary people. Even if she did not absorb oxygen, she could live for a while, but she could not live forever, or she would die sooner or later. Isdeth was unwilling to die together with Minister Onesta. You want to die here? I'm sorry. Although I've lived for hundreds of years, I haven't lived enough. If you want to die, you can continue to stay here and wait for death. Sorry, I have something to do, so I'll leave first. The sudden words made Isdeth stunned. She opened her crystal eyes and looked carefully. Dustless's eyes seemed to have changed dramatically. Is that Dustless's original appearance? Staring at the indifferent eyes, Isdeth was a little dumbfounded for a while. In that unique ocean, she was like a lonely boat that could tilt at any time. Isdeth couldn't tell the specific feeling clearly. In short, it was very small. God's power. As Dustless's voice fell, there was a ripple in the dark void. A small hole gradually enlarged, connecting to the unknown, mysterious world. From the section of the black hole, this death felt familiar. How did you do it? Do you also have the same Taigu as Sheila? Isdeth's eyes were shining. It was the first time for her to admire someone's life. People live in the world, no matter who your enemy is. No matter strong or weak, you have to keep a last card for yourself. In the previous world, there is the mark of my former flying thunder god warlock, which can be used as a space coordinate. The guy wants to throw me in the universe so that I can't go back. It's so funny. What is the flying thunder god warlock? Although Isdeth did not understand what he meant, she also understood that Dustless left a card in advance. She could not help but admire his far-sighted IQ secretly. Thinking of Dustless's previous words, she could not help but gently nodded. What he said was right. When a person lives in the world, no matter when, you have to prepare a way for yourself to be safe under any crisis. Let's go. Glancing at Isdeth faintly, Dustless took the lead to step into the black hole. Stepping into the hole that was torn by God's power, it was still a dark world. Isdeth followed Dustless. A path completely composed of special energy spread to the front. Can we really go back? About a few minutes later, the dark exhalation was endless, and Isdeth whispered, "If you don't believe me, you can go back. I promise not to stop you." Dustless suddenly stopped and pointed to the large dark space behind him. Isdeth glared and looked up at Dustless's indifferent eyes. She was angry. When did someone dare to talk to her like that? Isdeth, although I don't know what you plan, but you should deliberately let Sheila launch Shangri-La, Dimensional Matrix, right? Looking at Isdeth with no expression, Dustless then opened her true face, pointed to her eyes, and said calmly, "Don't think that I don't know anything. You can't hide anything from these eyes. Your Taigu, demon god's manifestation, essence of the demon, is a terrifying Taigu. The hidden ability, Mok Batmo, can even freeze time and space. If you use this trick, you should be able to kill Sheila instantly, but you deliberately let her go. I need a reasonable explanation." Chapter 1651. Isdeth couldn't help but be stunned. Hearing this decisive and affirmative tone, Isdeth had an illusion that Dustless was more familiar with the demon god's appearance, devil's essence, than herself. Don't hide it. Your move, Mok Baltimo, is enough to freeze time and space, but it consumes a lot of energy. Even you can only use it once a day. Dustless said, his eyes were full of wisdom. Predicting the future was one of the many skills of a traveler. I can use it once a day. I didn't expect you to know this kind of thing. Isdeth couldn't help but smile bitterly, feeling that all her secrets were exposed. She didn't expect Dustless to know this kind of thing. Isdeth's face showed a teasing smile. "You know so clearly. Have you ever sneaked into my residence and secretly stole from me? TSK. It's really easy to be careless. Living in my own home makes me feel uneasy and insecure." Dustless frowned when he heard that. He always felt that Isdeth's words had other meanings, but he still said, "As long as I want to know, you can't hide from my eyes no matter what underwear you wear." Isdeth did not deny it. She always felt that this was a fact, because her secret tricks were far more secretive than underwear. "Give me a reasonable explanation." Dustless was too lazy to continue to talk nonsense with Isdeth, and said directly, "Otherwise, I could throw you out, and you could die alone in this other dimension. In your situation at that time, you can freeze time and space to kill Sheila, but you didn't do so. With all due respect, this is too suspicious." The reason, after a while, Isdeth no longer concealed it. Her eyes were burning. She bit her thin lips and said, "A hungry beast. It has been hungry for a long time, and suddenly encountered a very rich meal. But the strength of this meal is too strong. What would you do if it were you?" What a strange metaphor. Wu Chun frowned slightly when he heard that. Then he said softly, "If it were me, I would deliberately approach it and wait for a suitable opportunity to launch a sneak attack and take it down in one fell swoop." "Wait, don't tell me the big meal you mentioned is me." Seeing Isdeth's hot eyes, Dustless asked angrily, If the big meal in your mouth is me, then I have to take back what I said just now, and I must give you a new answer. Tell me about it. Isteth asked expectantly. If it's me, then you'll be in big trouble, Miss Isteth. His eyes gradually became cold. Dustless turned into black and rushed out, and the deadly wind rushed to Isteth. So fast, Isteth's pupils shrank suddenly. Although she was surprised by Dustless's sudden attack, she reacted immediately and made a fierce counterattack. Ka. Isteth stomped her feet slightly, and then with herself as the center, a huge ice wall rose from the ground, wrapping Isteth in layers. It was airtight to the outside world, defending against the impact of Dustless. Fragile. Dustless looked contemptuous when he saw this. His eyes immediately turned, and the ice layer disintegrated in an instant. In just a few seconds, it suddenly evaporated and disappeared. Amaterasu. The black fire baked the ice layer around Isteth, and it peeled off at a speed visible to the naked eye. Isteth was also exposed to Dustless's attack. Still so strong, Isteth sighed slightly when she saw this, and her beautiful pupils immediately dimmed. But this was only a moment. Isteth was not the kind of person who would surrender. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. With a light wave of her hand, countless icicles shot out in a formation that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Fire release. His cheeks puffed up slightly, staring at the flying ice, and a big flame was blown out from Dustless's mouth. Fire release. Grand fire annihilation. The density and scope of the sea of fire flew out in an instant, and the icicles were melted into water drops before they got close to the sea of fire. A woman who doesn't know when to stop actually wants to torture me. It's a fool's dream. Dustless sneered coldly. The reason why Isteth was willing to be transmitted to other spaces with him was to find a suitable opportunity to approach him and then give a fatal blow. This crazy woman really belongs to the type of brain disease. Dustless was disgusted. He knew Isteth's strange character. It was necessary to be caught and tortured. And torturing a person who was stronger than herself was more successful than taming those scum. Isteth, you seem to think that I'm too easy to bully. With a cold smile on his face, Dustless suddenly laughed. This guy, Isteth, saw this and had a bad feeling. She felt uncomfortable being stared at by Dustless's playful eyes. When she tortured others, she usually used that kind of eyes. Since you took the initiative to come to me, then I can only give you a taste of your own medicine. You like to train others so much. Why don't you be generous this time and be trained by me? When these words fell, Dustless's body instantly disappeared without a trace. Where did he go? Isteth was shocked and quickly looked around, searching for Dustless's trace. Just at this time, a big cold hand suddenly grabbed her shoulder. And what worried Isteth even more was that her limbs lost most of their strength in an instant, and she had no extra strength to resist Dustless's powerful strength. I'm not a gentleman. You can call me a rude butcher. When I meet someone who doesn't obey, I only have one way to deal with it. With my fist. Chapter 1652. Damn guy, his strength is too strong. I can't break free. Aware that she was bound by Dustless, Isteth immediately struggled with all her strength. But sadly, Dustless's hand was like the hand of God. Even if his 5 fingers were just gently pressing her, Isteth had no extra strength to escape. Even because of the excessive force, Isteth herself was sweating. Dustless's smile was even more difficult to hide, quietly ridiculing Isteth for overestimating herself. I can only use that. With a ferocious luster in her eyes, Isteth decided to use her best trick. In such an embarrassing situation, only that trick could win by surprise. Mo boat mo. With a whisper, the world in Isteth's eyes immediately froze. Everything stopped flowing, and time stopped at this moment. Damn it, where did this damned monster come from? Isteth rubbed her sore shoulders and escaped from Dustless's restraint. Her eyes locked on him with hatred. At this moment, Dustless was like a stone, motionless. I can't hurt him. I can only hope that this guy will leave this damn place. Looking around the dark space, there were only Isdeth and Dustless in the whole world. Poochie. The ice sword was inserted into Dustless's body and cut open his stomach, but Isdeth avoided the fatal vital parts, hoping to use this to threaten Dustless to compromise. When I leave here, I will deal with you. TSK, TSK. I can even see you in my dreams. Your existence is both surprising and frightening. Looking at Dustless, Isdeth grabbed his chin and stared at the motionless Dustless. Suddenly, she felt that it was necessary to leave the mark of a winner on Dustless. It seems that I didn't bring anything meaningful when I came out. After thinking about it, Isdeth found that she had nothing good to leave. Finally, she looked at Dustless's dry lips, and her body was uncontrollably moved. What's wrong with me? After a while, Isdeth reflexively left her own lipstick mark on Dustless's lips, which was clearly visible. She blushed when she regained her consciousness, and her delicate jade face was even blushing. However, this revenge is very suitable. That arrogant gaze of this guy is truly displeasing, especially that appearance of his as if he is unrivaled in the world. Then Isdeth's shyness disappeared and became a matter of course. Staring at the conspicuous lipstick mark, Isdeth smiled and was very satisfied with her masterpiece. She felt that there was nothing wrong with it. The winner could do whatever they wanted with their spoils of war. They didn't need to care about the feelings of the people involved. She didn't need to care about Dustless's feelings. This was the privilege of the victor. Ka. A lot of cracks suddenly appeared in the special space. Isdeth frowned slightly and knew that the time for her unique skill, Moke Baltimo, was coming. Immediately, he looked down at Dustless with a complacent expression. He placed his hands on his hips and looked extremely arrogant, hoping to catch a glimpse of Dustless's disappointed and incredulous expression. And Dustless, who just woke up from a dream, frowned and suddenly felt a tingling pain in his chest. He subconsciously forgot that it was a big sword made of ice. Is it the skill called Moke Baltimo again? It's really convenient. Completely ignoring the ice sword that penetrated into his body, Dustless suddenly touched the corner of his mouth subconsciously, and a unique fragrance rushed into his nostrils along his cheeks. This is the smell of Isdeth's body. After taking 2 deep breaths, Dustless's face became more strange. Looking at Isdeth, who was close at hand, the smell was somewhat similar to her body, or even exactly the same. He vaguely guessed that Isdeth had done something crazy to him. The moral degeneration of the world is getting worse. It is necessary to guard against female perverts in the future, otherwise it will be easy to get away with it. Dustless said to himself like a wooden man. Why? Do you have a problem? Catching the strange expression that flashed across Dustless's face, Isdeth thought it was dissatisfaction and swore coldly and domineeringly. Don't say that I just kissed you a little now. I tell you, you are now my prisoner of war. Whatever I want to do to you, I will do it to you. All these are the privileges of the strong, and the weak are destined to be exploited and trampled. Isdeth is really arrogant and lawless. Wu Chun raised his middle finger at her without any hesitation. It's fine if you just kiss someone casually, but you even arrogantly announce that all of this is the privilege of the strong. You're so arrogant and bossy that you treat everything like an ant. But this arrogant personality was also in line with Isdeth's personality. The privileges of the strong? She whispered softly. Then the ice sword that penetrated Dustless's body collapsed instantly, inexplicably all shattered, and the long and narrow wound also showed signs of recovery. In this case, that is to say, people with big fists can dominate the fate of others at will? Then please kneel down immediately and make a gesture to please me. With a wicked smile on his face, Dustless decisively chose to return all. What Isdeth did to him, he must return all. In the words of Isdeth, this was the privilege of the strong. The wound is healed. Isdeth was stunned, and her eyes were wide open. She did not expect that Dustless had such an ability to make people jealous. At the same time, with the arrival of the majestic momentum, Isdeth's knees gradually bent down. Isdeth, now kneel down and please me. Chapter 1653. Let me kneel down to please you. Isteth's pretty face suddenly glanced over when she heard the words. She simply did not look at Dustless's hateful eyes. Instead of surrendering, she became more arrogant. Say a reason for me to kneel down and surrender to you, Isteth retorted coldly. She was not afraid of Dustless's despotic power. Isteth would not bow down to Dustless for such a big thing about her face. Not to mention kneeling down, it was absolutely impossible. Ah, do you still need a reason? This kind of worthless excuse, didn't you just say it for me? Dustless smiled and circled around Isteth. Then all the momentum broke out and fell on Isteth. She immediately gasped like a cow, but Isteth's knees never knelt down. TSK, so arrogant? Dustless smacked his mouth, then raised a wicked smile at the corner of his mouth. The sense of oppression overflowing from the body was a little stronger. Boom, boom, boom. There was a huge ripple in the dark, mysterious space. Dustless released his momentum. Isteth finally couldn't stand it. Even if she was unwilling, she had to bow her head at this moment and kneel in front of Dustless without dignity. Have you forgotten everything you said just now? Then let me help you remember. The winner has the privilege to let you kneel down and bow your arrogant head. Dustless looked down at Isteth with a threatening look and immediately raised his eyes slightly, showing a very kind expression. I am not as bad as you, who likes to torture others' bodies. I think it is the highest level of torture to give the other party a serious mental blow and cause serious psychological obstacles. What do you want to do? Seeing Dustless's devilish smile, Isteth felt a chill on her back. Her tone couldn't help but be a lot weaker, not as strong as before. Hey. Dustless heard the words and smiled casually. He immediately snapped his fingers and said loudly, You will know right away. Focusing on Isteth's blue pupils, Dustless's sight suddenly became distorted. A massive amount of eye power surged and instantly annihilated Isteth's mind. Tsukuyami. His eyes emitted abnormal mental power, and his eyes gently stared at Isteth. Her eyes suddenly became empty. She was like a walking corpse in an instant. Her eyes had no luster. In an unknown, mysterious world. What is this place? Isteth opened her eyes and looked confused. She carefully looked at this strange world and suddenly realized that she was tied to a cross. There was no one around, and there was only a large bed in front of her. What's going on? Isteth was stunned. There was another her on the quilt, and what made Isteth blush was that she was entangled with a man, and this man was the existence that made Isteth gnash her teeth, Dustless. Moreover, the two of them quickly did the deed. Illusion. It must be an illusion. Isteth's face turned green when she saw this. She almost vomited blood when she saw herself being ruined by Dustless. This scene was unbearable. Dustless humiliated Isteth severely, and she even smiled shamelessly. She accepted any request of Dustless and executed it without hesitation. Hey. It was an extremely obscene voice. Isteth turned her head and saw Dustless with a smirk on his face. He was teasing her. How does this feel? Watching yourself and your enemy doing that kind of thing together. Hey, you have never experienced this before, right? This scene will play out in front of you for the next 24 hours. Dustless smiled proudly and made up his mind to destroy Isteth's dignity. You bastard, kill me if you have the guts. Isteth vomited blood. She didn't expect Dustless to be so despicable. Don't be proud. I know this is an illusion. I won't be affected by you. Isteth retorted with a red face. I'm sorry. Although Tsukuyami is an illusion, everything you experience in this world will be returned to the real you. Dustless laughed with a smug expression. At the same time, Dustless waved his hand, and a bottle of special pills appeared in his hand. Everything in this world was under his control. Dustless could get whatever he wanted. Gulp. Dustless glanced at Isteth maliciously and finally stuffed all the pills into her mouth. What is this? Why is it sweet? It's delicious. Give me a few more if you have the guts. Isteth pretended to be calm, but her heart was very strange. Her body was so hot that she felt uncomfortable, as if she was about to explode. A few more? Dustless immediately showed a shocked expression when he heard the words. He stared at his death stupidly and choked. Are you sure you want a few more? And are you sure it's delicious? This thing will go bad if you eat too much. Although you have a strong ability to resist attacks, there's no need to court death. Maybe there will be a big problem. I'm fine. I'll take a few more bottles. Staring at Dustless's shocked face, Isteth had a sense of achievement. She endured the discomfort of her body and planned to annoy Dustless. This was the first time that Isteth found Dustless defeated. Of course, she had to hit him hard. However, Wu Chen's next words made Isteth, who was in high spirits, collapse. She even almost suffocated to death without being able to catch her breath. Cough, cough, cough. Miss Isteth, you think that the pill is delicious. I'm very happy because I made it myself. But I forgot to remind you just now. The pill is actually an aphrodisiac. Chapter 1654. This is an aphrodisiac. Isteth's face was extremely colorful in an instant, blue and white, purple and black. In just a few seconds, she changed more than a dozen different faces back and forth. Isteth wanted to ask Dustless if he needed to be so despicable. You bastard, I will tear you into pieces. Isteth gnashed her teeth and held back her anger. Her body was trembling, and the flame in her heart was getting hotter and hotter. Isteth was not good. Her cheeks were flushed, and her blue eyes were almost bursting into flames. Still so strong, Dustless heard the words and laughed. He simply sat next to Isteth, holding his chin, and smiled. I'm curious how long you can support. Oh, yes, a thought flashed through his mind. Then Wu Chan said loudly, Miss Isteth, if I remember correctly, you just wanted to eat this thing, right? Pointing to the pill in his hand. It was the aphrodisiac that Isteth had just eaten. I didn't. Isteth quickly denied. Kidding. Only an idiot would continue to eat that thing. You are just my captive now, and you have no right to choose. Glancing at Isteth faintly, Dustless did not hesitate to pour another bottle of medicine into Isteth's throat. Woo woo woo. Gulp. Isteth gnashed her teeth, but her arms couldn't resist the long legs. After a few sobs, she swallowed all the aphrodisiac in her throat. Hey, this is a good show. Ignoring Isteth, who was vomiting, Dustless stared at Isteth motionlessly, as if he had found a fun toy and was very interested. You wait. Isteth was extremely sad. She clenched her gums, and even blood oozed out. The pain made her think clearly. Gee, your determination is really admirable. Aren't you afraid of biting off your tongue? Dustless said with a worried tone, but he really admired Isteth's decisiveness in his heart. You look down on me too much. Isteth snorted coldly. Her tone was still that of a queen. Even if she was full of flaws, even if she became a captive, she would not easily bow down to Dustless. Really? Then congratulations on passing the first level, Miss Isteth. You can enjoy it slowly. Such an experience is unforgettable. I said before that the duration of Tsukuyami is 24 hours. Dustless wore a harmless smile on his face. He waved his hand and disappeared from the Tsukuyami space. The world that entered his eyes turned into endless darkness. It's about time to go back. That damn brat. Does she think she's special? What a joke. But since this kind of thing happened suddenly, I don't need to do anything in the future. Isteth hates the father and son. Ding ding. Yin yin yin. A light hum came out from Isteth's mouth. Looking down at her dark red cheeks, it seemed that Isteth's head was not normal at the moment. Her eyes were filled with desire as she tried her best to raise her burning right arm to tug at the corner of Dustless's clothes. She couldn't help but touch the most important part of Dustless's body. All of this was done instinctively. Tisk, it's really abnormal. Carefully observing Isteth's blurred eyes, Dustless's heart was as calm as water, and his wild nature could be controlled reasonably. Isteth exuded a strong smell of maturity. People with a little less concentration might rush to her. It's time to retreat. Ignoring the dark world, Dustless gently raised his right arm, covered with a special Ryatsu fluctuation. This was not the Ryatsu of an ordinary Grim Reaper. The temperament was cruel and fierce. It was undoubtedly the Ryatsu of a greater void. Greater void above Ajuchas, including Ajuchas, had a special ability, Black Cavity, which could open the space crack connecting to other dimensions, so it was not difficult to leave here. After a while, Dustless raised his right hand, condensed an inexplicable power, and immediately slid it gently. Kakaka! This mysterious world of different dimensions suddenly broke, and the bright sunshine also shone in. Isdeth, who had been tortured by the blow, also opened her eyes and looked at the world full of life. Her eyes were dull and empty. I'm counting on you to retaliate against Minister Onesta. Don't let me down. Turning his head and holding Isdeth, Wu Chan stepped out of the dark, extra-dimensional space. The bright sky was cloudless. Although the air of the blue void was full of blood, it was fresher than the previous place where he couldn't even see his own fingers. Dustless stepped on the void and looked at the ground below. It was a large number of human-shaped, dangerous species that were slaughtered. I guess that came, and the others have retreated. His observation hockey spread out and found that within a few kilometers of the surrounding area, there was no sign of life, and the dense forest had become an out-and-out place in the world, without a trace of life. It's time for me to retreat. Moving his stiff body a little, Dustless was about to leave, but Isdeth's voice stopped Dustless from leaving. You'd better kill me. Isdeth's tone was weak, her body was hollowed out, her clothes were wet and filled with a special accident. Although you hate me now, maybe you will come to me for help in the future. His clear eyes locked on the powerless Isdeth. Dustless waved his hand and left leisurely. Without enough strength in the future, Isdeth will not continue to come to die, unless she still wants to experience the unforgettable feeling of a lifetime. At present, Isdeth's big enemies. There are two more abominable objects, Minister Onesta and his son. They are more annoying than Dustless. Without them, nothing will happen, and Isdeth will not be played by Dustless. The initiators of all this are Minister Onesta and his son. Isdeth naturally hates them, and it is necessary to rush back to the capital to retaliate. Chapter 1655. Isdeth was not a naive girl. She knew what would happen if she retaliated against Dustless before she had enough strength. This time, Dustless just deliberately disgusted her to shatter Isdeth's unattainable heart. Next time, when she was tired of Dustless, she could kill him. The stronger a person was, the more difficult it was to figure out their mind. They could call each other brothers in the last second, but the next second, they could turn into a smiling tiger and stab him in the back at any time. Dustless, I will fight you to death. Isdeth gasped with her mouth wide open. She was tortured by Dustless. During the time in the Tsukimi space, every day felt like a year, which made Isdeth understand the highest level of torturing people. She was so inexperienced before. Plop! Isdeth, who had just stood up, didn't expect to fall to the ground before she took a step. Her body had been hollowed out by the hateful aphrodisiac. She walked unsteadily. Isdeth herself was also very confused. People who didn't know the truth might think that she was sleepwalking. Lady Isdeth. The happy and excited voice came from not far away. She turned her head and saw a few people reflected in her eyes. It was Isdeth's hunter special police. But several people were deeply tired, and there were obvious knife wounds on their clothes. Their faces were sallow, and they were not much different from refugees suffering from famine. It's good that you are all right. Her tiredness was swept away, and Isdeth showed a satisfied smile. She hit it very well. The unlucky things that happened with Dustless before were out of her sight. By the way, what happened to the scars on your body? These seem to be knife wounds. Don't tell me that those dangerous species in human form can use weapons. Isdeth asked puzzledly. Is Isdeth talking about these scars? Will took a step forward, bowed his head, and reported angrily. It's the minister's son, Sheila. When we were hunting dangerous species, that guy led the army to attack us indiscriminately. He didn't even give a reason. In order to cover our retreat, Speaking of this, Lon, Will, and Kirom all lowered their heads in shame. The meaning was self-evident. Damn you, Sheila. Damn Minister Ernest. Esteth was furious. She turned into a demon and released a suffocating, killing intent. The area within hundreds of meters was covered with ice. Even some birds on the treetops were frozen and turned into specimens before they could fly. Esteth naturally knew the hidden meaning of Will's words. Bulls had been killed. The members of the night raid were now filled with resentment towards the father and son of the minister. They had also lost their last bit of confidence in the Empire. In fact, Will had even suggested joining the night raid. Surprisingly, the other members did not object to it. Go back to the imperial capital and chop the ministers into pieces to feed the dogs. Lowering the brim of her hat, Esteth's breath was as cold as the cold wind. This wild beast showed its sharp fangs out of the cage. She used to aim at the enemy, but this time she aimed at the Empire. She forgot all the grievances with Dustless. In the new night raid base, I thought that guy was dead. In the conference room, looking at Dustless sitting opposite, Tatsumi covered his eyes in despair. He didn't have the ability to kill Dustless. The tragedy was that even God protected Dustless, and he could be lucky every time. This is the fundamental reason why I was temporarily restrained. 10 minutes later, Dustless reported the reason for his disappearance to Najenda. Of course, he chose to forget the thing with his death. This would definitely be isolated as a pervert, but some people still made use of it. I didn't expect his death to be so obsessed with you. Leonet's eyes were shining. Then she slammed the table and suggested loudly, "Why don't we use Dustless to seduce his death? Maybe we can kill her." Pucci. The tea that he just drank was sprayed out. Dustless stared at Leonet and scolded, "Esteth is not a love-struck fool, and my charm is not that big. Let's put Esteth's matter aside for the time being. I'm afraid that she will have a great change. We don't need to provoke this furious lioness for the time being. Don't act rashly." Boss Najenda abnormally refused Leonet's proposal. If it was before, she might really accept this proposal, but now the situation was different. Esteth was trapped by Minister Honest and even almost died. According to Najenda's understanding of his death, Honest and his son would inevitably suffer from his death's crazy revenge. Naturally, there was no need to participate in the night raid. It was best to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight. Our next task is Balak. He is the assistant of the Taoist Master of Tranquility, but his real identity is the undercover sent by Minister Honest. There is news that the Taoist Master of Tranquility is planning an armed uprising recently, but this Balak is the biggest obstacle. For the revolution, we must get rid of him. This old guy is not simple. He knows that he is the target of the night raid, and there are masters like the 4 Rakshasa demons around him to protect him. Boss Najenda explained happily. As long as the Taoist Master of Tranquility also followed the uprising, the empire would be finished soon, and a new country would come. Finally, we're going to kill this eyesore empire. The members of a night raid were very excited. They had been assassins for so long. No matter who they assassinated or protected, they just wanted to destroy the empire. Finally, they waited for this day, and everyone was very happy. Yes, the infinite Tsukuyomi will save all living beings soon. Everyone should feel happy. Chapter 1656. Damn it, damn it, damn it. In the palace hall, there was an angry voice. The strong minister was smashing all kinds of exquisite porcelain angrily. Generalist Death, don't kill us. Outside the hall, such screams could be heard. Pucci. However, what they got in return was the sound of the cold body being cut. Shura, Sheila, you are useless. Didn't you tell me that you killed this Death? Why is she resurrected now? I really shouldn't have trusted a piece of trash like you. Minister Onesta scolded his son to his face. This old man, Sheila's mind was filled with hundreds of thousands of alpacas. He didn't know how his death came back, especially looking at his death's appearance of killing hundreds of people. He couldn't help but feel cold. The so-called troops and numbers were meaningless in front of his death, especially she had several loyal and strong subordinates. Your Majesty, Minister Onesta's eyes were bright, looking at the young emperor with impassioned eyes, as if he saw gold The desperate old eyes were shining. Minister, the young emperor's pupil shrank. His face was slightly stiff. The old man's eyes made him a little overwhelmed. He was almost melted. You should immediately show the temperament of an emperor now. Use the strongest, supreme taigu, supreme taser, to give justice to his death, the traitor. Minister Onesta cried loudly. If your majesty doesn't do it and continues to be silent, the empire will be disintegrated by the traitorous death. The empire must not collapse in my generation. Absolutely. The young emperor's eyes were red when he heard the words. He had accepted the Minister Onesta's suggestion in his mind. You are really my father. Sheila saw that the emperor was so easy to fool. He secretly admired him. After despising him in his mind, he gave the minister a thumbs up. Pa! Sheila suddenly felt a pain in his old face. He looked in the mirror and saw that it was a huge palm print. Minister Onesta even slapped him mercilessly. You are useless. Minister Onesta was so angry that his blood pressure rose and his head was spinning. He was disappointed with this good son. If it weren't for his bad idea, his death as betrayal wouldn't have happened. Damn it! Minister Onesta was furious. Thinking of the fate of being caught alive by his death, his fat face trembled. If he was caught alive, he would inevitably be subjected to the most severe torture. Get the hell out of here! Minister Onesta shouted coldly. Now that things had progressed to this point, he no longer counted on this deceitful son of his. It was much easier to deal with the foolish and easily fooled emperor. His death will be dealt with by his majesty. Now you should go to reinforce Balak. That guy is very important now. If he has a problem, don't come back. Remember, you have to go there secretly and don't let anyone find out. You'd better kill all the members of Night Raid. Otherwise, even if you're my son, I won't let you off easily. Do you understand? Azura. Minister Onesta waved his hand, indicating that his idiot son could scram. 3 days later, at the site of Anning Road, all the members of Night Raid gathered here. Originally, everyone was ready to fight with the Empire. Unexpectedly, Isteth suddenly attacked the Imperial capital. Most of the soldiers were involved. Now the task of Night Raid was much easier. I hope that General Isteth will be a good person to the end and help us kill Minister Onesta and the Little Emperor. Wu Chun, Mine, and Chi Tong walked on the street openly. Now the Empire was besieged on all sides, and it was in a dangerous and embarrassing situation that the Empire was about to collapse. No one cared about them. Have you found that these people are not right? They look at us strangely. Stopping, Dustless glanced at the passers-by with a face full of doubts. He always felt that these people's eyes were full of hatred and disgust, and full of hatred. Stupid Dustless, of course, we are all killers, and we don't disguise ourselves. It's normal for people to feel strange and afraid when they look at us. Mine replied proudly and snorted proudly. Or, you and his death have been together for a period of time, and your head is not enough for you to think about her big breasts? You didn't even notice such a little thing. You, I can smell something else from your tone. Dustless's eyes fell on Mine's head, and he teased with a smile. Are you jealous? Jealous that his death has bigger breasts than you. Mine's tone is really sour, and there is indeed the possibility of jealousy. Akame added quickly, making Mine's face blush to the extreme, giving people a sense of danger that was about to explode. Bullshit. Mine straightened her chest, held her head high, raised her hands, and turned her head disdainfully. What's the use of those 2 lumps of meat? I will dislike them when I walk. Let me tell you, too, as a woman, the connotation is the key. Mine, don't quibble. I can smell your jealousy. Akame shook her head gently, and her eyes were always staring at the heads of the passers-by. She also felt strange. In addition to assassinating Balak, it seems that our mission is to instigate the Anning sect. Why haven't we seen the hierarch yet? I remember that the headquarters of the Revolutionary Army contacted him in advance. Also, I think there are problems in other places. Akame looked at these people cautiously and said in a deep voice, to be honest, I also feel that these believers are full of hostility to us. The Revolutionary Army should have no hatred with them. Why do they have a hidden killing intent to us? Or is this my illusion? It's not an illusion. I can also feel the hostility clearly. Dustless looked serious and said calmly, "There is another possibility. The hierarch disappeared, or he may have died. These believers are hostile to us. I am afraid that it is because the behind-the-scenes manipulator pushed the death of the hierarch of the Anning sect to us." Chapter 1657. Was he killed? Mine and Scarlet Pupil lowered their heads and pondered. If they analyzed carefully, it was not impossible. On the way here, they received the news that someone wanted to assassinate the hierarch of a Ning sect. In order to prevent the rebellion of a Ning sect, Minister Ernest instigated his subordinate Polly to kill the hierarch, and then it was normal to blame the news on the night raid. "Let's retreat temporarily," Dustless suddenly suggested softly as he looked at the dark alley on the left. Later, regardless of whether Scarlet Pupil and mine struggled or not, he directly pulled them away. "Ah, that guy's a good nose. It's really a headache." Shortly after Dustless and others left, there was an unhappy tone from the previous alley. He said in surprise, "That guy named Dustless seems to have noticed something wrong. Damn it, I still want them to continue to sneak into the city and then annihilate them. Who knows that these guys of the night raid slipped away in advance, a group of cowards." With the help of the blurred light, for vague figures with different appearances could be seen in the depths of the corner. 2 were women and 2 were men. They were the private executioners of Minister Ernest for Rakshasa demons. Catch up with them. Anyway, Polly has Master Sheila's protection. If we kill all the members of the night raid, it will be a great achievement. Ling Lu, one of the 4 Rakshasa demons, said, "Yes, don't be afraid. For against 3, we have an absolute advantage." The other 3 nodded after hearing the words. They glanced coldly at the direction where Dustless and others left. They immediately looked at each other and decisively followed. Looking at this posture, it seemed that they wanted to beat up Dustless and others. Oh, the night sky fell. The cold wind of the night was blowing. It was extremely piercing and filled with a different kind of oppression. Somewhere on the top of a low hill, Wu Chun, mine, and Chi Tong looked down at the town in the distance. They were all silent. Only mine's eyes were rolling. "Why should we retreat?" Mine asked puzzledly. She clearly noticed that someone was secretly following them at that time. She could take this opportunity to kill the other party and ask about the internal information of a Ning sect. Ask me why? Of course, we have to change to a more suitable place for the duel. Fighting in a spacious open area is definitely better than fighting in a narrow street. Dustless turned his head slightly, revealing half of his face. He stared at the flickering shadow. "If I'm not wrong, the 4 of you think so too, right?" He discovered us. The 4 Rakshasa demons, who were hiding, looked at each other in shock. They seemed to be very confident in their skills in hiding their aura, and all of them had an incredulous expression on their faces. "I'll say it again. It's 4 against 3. There's no reason for us to lose." GD, one of the 4 Rakshasa demons, showed up. He was the strongest, so he should be the vanguard. Not only did he run away, he even dared to stop and put on airs. G, the strongest of the 4 Rakshasa demons, sneered. "Long time no see, Chi Tong." Thorn. Chi Tong also nodded slightly. The 2 of them had known each other for a long time. They were both members of the assassination team, but now that their positions were different, Chi Tong decisively drew his sword. "Run away? You must have made a mistake. I waited for so long just for the 4 of you. I thought that you would take the initiative to launch a sneak attack, but who would have thought that you would suddenly hide like rats? Your performance is too disappointing. An assassin dares to be so arrogant." Hearing this, the members of the 4 Rakshasa demons glared at him. In the past, before the Empire was in chaos, night raids were often carried out with their tails between their legs and kept a low profile. No matter where they went, it was the same. They had to put on a meticulous disguise. Now they were so arrogant that they dared to invade. This was a naked provocation. "Can you 2 deal with the 4 of them?" Dustless asked Chi Tong and mine lazily. As for Sheila, he turned his head and glanced at the city in the distance. "I'll deal with the minister's son and that bollock." Damn old guy. He actually sent me to this damn place. In the luxurious palace, Sheila complained while drinking. She was quite tired of her father, Minister Honest, and hated the current boring and monotonous life. Boom, boom, boom. A huge explosion rose into the sky, and then the warm palace was penetrated by someone. The cold wind, along with an indifferent voice, all fell into Sheila's ears. There's no need to resent him. In a month at most, you and your father, Minister Onesta, will meet again in the frying pan of hell. Who is it? Get out of here. Sheila saw the situation and shouted. He suddenly stood up decadently. His body was tall, and his muscles were extremely strong and hard. He clenched his fists and looked quite intimidating. However, this inexplicable majesty only lasted for a few seconds, and it was an instant tragedy. Boom, boom, boom. A dazzling light came from the sky without warning. The dazzling light covered Sheila's whole body, and the blazing temperature made her feel a fatal threat. It's too dangerous. It can even track automatically. With a flash, Sheila hurriedly dodged the attack of the light. She was more than 10 meters away and thought that she could avoid the disaster. But before Sheila could even catch her breath, she was once again suppressed by the merciless flash. Boom, boom, boom. The strong and fierce force suddenly fell, mercilessly stepped on Sheila's head, and stomped her whole body into the ground. Even the ground showed signs of cracking because of the strong force. Speed is power. Have you ever been kicked by the speed of light, Sheila? Chapter 1658. Boom, boom, boom. Endless rays of light whizzed toward his face. Sheila felt the deadly sharpness. His breathing was accelerated by dozens of times, and there were even bean-sized sweat drops on his forehead. Buzz, buzz, buzz. He subconsciously activated the taigu with his right hand. Boom, boom, boom. The place where Sheila stood was attacked by the light speed kick and turned into scorched earth. The entire palace was in ruins, and the moon hanging high in the sky suddenly appeared in front of his eyes. Master Sheila. The huge vibration attracted the attention of the guards of the Anonism sect. A middle-aged man with a fat face and luxurious clothes hurried over, looking at the ruins in front of him. His face was very nervous. This person was Balak, and he was also the spy sent by Onesta to monitor the hierarch of the Anonism sect. Is this guy really here to protect me? Damn it, he better not get beaten to death. Otherwise, Minister Onesta will not let me go. Balak looked around anxiously and carefully searched for Sheila's traces. He cursed him thousands of times in his mind. After all, Sheila was Onesta's son. If he died here, Balak would be implicated as well. Of course, he is fine. The ability of the taigu is not bad. It can move in space. A strange voice sounded in his ears. Balak looked over there. When he just turned his head, a thug grabbed his throat and then easily lifted Balak up. It's so uncomfortable. His neck was grabbed. Balak felt that breathing was 100 times more difficult than usual. He glanced at the culprit with tears, trying to win sympathy. But after seeing the culprit behind the scenes, his heart suddenly became weak. Dustless of a night attack. Balak's heart was cold, and he was desperate. The night attack was all emotionless executioners. It was more realistic to expect them to be merciful than to pray to God. Do you know me? The indifferent face slightly relaxed. Dustless sighed. Damn, I wanted to kill you directly, but I didn't expect you to know me. Gulp. Balak choked for a moment, and suddenly there was hope for survival. Listening to Dustless's words, it seemed that he wanted to let him go. Of course I know you. Your name is spread all over the capital? No, it is spread all over the world, Master Dustless. Balak flattered. He was happier than seeing his father. Do you know me? That's for the best. I don't want to waste time talking nonsense. It'll save me a lot of trouble. Dustless sighed in relief. Then please let me go, sir. I'll disappear from your sight, and you won't be in any trouble. Balak said excitedly. You've misunderstood me. Dustless was startled when he heard this. Then he said coldly, You know my name. After you go to the underworld, you can give King Yama a suitable answer and know who killed you. I don't need to introduce myself. That's all. Goodbye. Crack. As soon as he finished speaking, Wu Chan exerted his strength and broke Balak's neck. Damn it, you actually dared to kill him. Sheila appeared with an ashen face, the veins on his face bulging. You must die here today. Minister Onesta had asked Shira to protect Balak. Now that Shira had been killed by the night raid, and there was no way to capture Dustless, even if the minister was his father, he would not have a good ending. Bring it on. Hooking his finger, Dustless threw away Balak in his hand and signaled Sheila to bring it on. Taigu, Shangri-La, Sheila shouted. The Taigu in his hand shone with purple light and covered Sheila's whole body. Then his strong body evaporated and disappeared without a sign. The ability of this Taigu is not bad. It's worth collecting as a toy. Dustless showed a satisfied expression. Then he opened his mouth gently and said, 90 black coffin of breaking Tao. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The Ryatsu in Dustless's body was rolling. The black light condensed and attacked from all directions. The quantity was enough to easily turn a person into a sieve. And the target of the attack was Dustless himself. It seemed that they wanted to die together with him. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. The horrifying sound continued, and there was a lot of blood on the ground. Impossible, it's absolutely impossible. How can you guess where I will appear? The space-type Taigu is not just a simple body movement. You can't predict where I will appear. Sheila shouted in disbelief. Looking at him carefully, he was covered with bruises. There were traces of being crushed by the black coffin. The whole person was also full of holes. You're right. I can't predict where you will appear. However, don't forget that the target of your attack is only me from the beginning to the end. So as long as the target of the black coffin is set to be me, then you will naturally be involved. Dustless explained calmly. You damn bastard. Sheila heard the words and gritted his teeth. The black coffin on his body had been torn, and the blood kept flowing. It was only a matter of time before he died. If I die, you'll also die. Who'll let you set yourself as the target? After a while, Sheila laughed gloatingly. It's a good ending to die with you, huh? Really? Then I'm sorry. Although I've lived for hundreds of years, as you can see, I'm far from living enough. Opening his clothes, revealing his intact chest, Dustless explained faintly, my body, I have used armament hockey to defend before, and it's intact. Poochie, Sheila, who couldn't stand the blow, spat out blood. After looking at Dustless unwillingly, he closed his eyes in despair and was so angry that he vomited blood and died in advance. Chapter 1659. It's really sad. Glancing at Sierra indifferently, Dustless stepped over his body and left. When he was about to take away the Taigu, a pair of rough big hands suddenly grabbed his right leg. Ha ha! I caught it! Sierra, who closed his eyes, suddenly opened his eyes again, showing a crazy light, and the light of the extinguished Taigu actually shined again. The purple light flashed unscrupulously, covering a large range. All the space that was affected was distorted, and it was deterred by a special force, revealing an indescribable, ominous feeling. You are really tough. Your heart was torn by the black coffin. Dustless did not change his expression. He knew that this guy would use the ability to calculate himself and his death last time. Don't forget my identity. It's easy to get the enhancer. If you want to complain, you can only complain that you treat me as an ordinary human being. Sierra said proudly. His face was red. He was excited as if he had taken drugs. It was obviously a final radiance. Really? Then I will reluctantly admit you. However, do you think this trick is useful? You sent me and his death to a different space. I still came back safe and sound. Dustless glanced at Sierra contemptuously. The space around had begun to change and appeared in a strange world, but Dustless was still unmoved. You guy. Sierra's old face was particularly gloomy when he heard the words. Dustless was sent to another dimension. It was too strange that he could still come back. Do you think I will do the same thing again? You underestimate me too much. Sierra suddenly changed his face and smiled. When I traveled to the edge of the Empire, I once found a special good place. There were dangerous species everywhere, and even super dangerous species appeared. The voice just fell. The world in front of Dustless's eyes was brand new. It was originally a large ruin, but now it became a wilderness. There were weathered white bones everywhere. Ow, ow. Immediately after, a heart-wrenching roar spread through the sky. Dustless's appearance was like a rich fragrance of honey, attracting groups of dangerous species to whiz over. Ha! This is a good place, right? I've been here before. This trick was originally reserved for Generalist Death, but unfortunately, that smelly old man sent me here to deal with you. Sheila looked up to the sky and laughed. She stared at Dustless, trying to capture a trace of fear. After all, this location was special. Not to mention the large number of dangerous species gathered here. There were also super dangerous species that were countless times stronger than dangerous species. In Sheila's view, Dustless was already in a state of certain death. Why didn't you even leave a corpse for yourself? After a moment of silence, Dustless suddenly asked such an inexplicable question, which confused Sierra. Sheila was taken aback. She said coldly, "Don't you know how to speak human language? Please say that I can understand." It's so hot. Damn it, what's going on? Sheila, who was lying on the ground, suddenly howled in pain. She was shocked to find that the ground was too much of a stretch. The ground that had been hard just a moment ago was all bubbling. Is this King magma? Could it be that I'm dreaming? Sheila rolled on the ground to relieve her pain as she looked at the ground around her in shock. His body had begun to melt and gradually disappeared. Are you the one who did this? Sheila gritted her teeth in pain and suddenly wished that she could die earlier. At the same time, she looked at Dustless. She was sure that he was the initiator. At this moment, his appearance was very strange, and there was a dark red reincarnation Sharingan on his forehead. I have lived for hundreds of years, and I have never shown this eye on my forehead. You are the first. You are lucky, but also very tragic, because you won't even leave a corpse. Glancing at Sheila with a blank face, Dustless whispered, "Heaven's defense." Gulp. Spatial displacement. Dustless and the rest arrived at an unfamiliar world. But this world's myriad phenomena were all constructed from magma. Mountains were formed by magma. Rivers were also formed by magma. And the earth was also tumbling magma. Everything in this world was made of magma. It's so hot. With a scream, Sheila fell into the magma. Including those dangerous species, they were swallowed by the super-large magma world in an instant. This loot is not bad. Looking at the taigu in his hand, Dustless nodded with satisfaction. Among many taigu, this was the only one that he could see. Dimensional Matrix, Shangri-La. Dustless was the Jubi itself. He once occupied everything of Kagaya. He could use all her techniques, but there was no suitable target to use it. Now this guy got it. 2 days later, they attacked the base at night. Dustless, Mine, and Akame returned safely. Unexpectedly, when they just returned to the base, they got the shocking news from the boss agenda. Dustless also lost his mind for a while. Is Steph lost? This joke is not funny at all. I still believe that Steph will lose to Dustless. How can she lose to the useless Minister Ernest? This information is wrong. Lubbock tore the information in his hand into pieces and felt that his IQ was insulted. The news in the Imperial capital was very tight, but some people saw the clues. At that time, a giant appeared in the sky of the Imperial capital. It was dozens of meters high. It finally defeated Esteth, and it was still an overwhelming victory. Najinda took a smoke and then said seriously, "It is rumored that it is the strongest Taigu, the supreme Taigu that only the blood of the Emperor can activate. Supreme Taser. Even if the little Emperor really uses Taser, it is impossible to crush his death." Dustless shook his head resolutely. He knew the strength of his death. She might be defeated, but it was not scientific to crush his death. Mrs. Death, your embarrassed expression is really wonderful. I feel that I can eat 10 more bowls of food when I go back. A voice full of banter suddenly came, and in the jungle there were several strange breaths. Are they here? Hearing this cynical voice, Isdeth knew that the old enemy was here, dustless. Through the dense leaves, the silhouettes that came out of the darkness were dustless: Chi-Tong, Leonette, and the boss Najinda. As for the others, they were all ambushed secretly. Once Isdeth had abnormal behavior, they would immediately eliminate them. Long time no see, Isdeth. Najinda glared at Dustless, which meant that he should not make trouble, and immediately walked to Isdeth politely and shook hands with her. As I expected, Isdeth's Taigu was sealed, so it is normal for her to lose to the little emperor. The Taigu symbol between Isdeth's two chests had disappeared at the moment. Dustless looked at Isdeth carefully, and the appreciation on his face was not hidden. Without the ability of Taigu, she could still take two subordinates with her own strength to escape from the Supreme Taigu, Supreme Taser. What Isdeth did was commendable. Kirom, sister. Both Chi-Tong and Kirom looked at each other complicatedly. From the enemy to the ally in the same trench, the two sisters seemed to be difficult to accept for a while. Najinda, let's work together. When attacking the capital, I am willing to be the first to fight until the breath is completely lost. With a wave of her hand, Isdeth announced with a domineering momentum. But these words fell into Dustless's ears. It was tantamount to looking for death. Without Taigu, if she wanted to fight with the Taigu Supreme Taser alone, wasn't this looking for death? This is the best. We will definitely win. Also, it's late. Temporarily return to the night raid base to make a long-term plan. Najinda nodded like a chicken and finally invited Isdeth to dinner. It was better to rest in the night raid base and get closer to each other. This was an indispensable ally. Although Isdeth's strength was now greatly reduced, the only one who dared to say that he could crush her in the night raid was Dustless. Moreover, even if Isdeth suddenly attacked, Najinda did not care. Anyway, Dustless could subdue her. There was nothing to be afraid of. By the way, I have always wanted to ask a question. At this time, Dustless suddenly interrupted and asked a very sensitive question, so that Isdeth and Najinda were both stiff. The relatively harmonious scene was made rather awkward by Dustless for a while. Even if he didn't offend Dustless, he was still inexplicably tricked by this guy. Could it be that this guy is omnipotent? Glancing at Dustless with a complicated look, Isdeth looked lonely. She used to have the hope of surpassing Dustless. Now, after losing the power of Taigu, her confidence was also annihilated, and now it was gone with the wind. She used to fantasize about keeping Dustless as a pet, but now it seemed that there was no chance in this life. In the base of the night attack, Najinda and Isdeth had something to talk about. Dustless, Chi-Tong, and her sister were closed in a special room with only one bed. The person lying on the operating table was Kirom. Crack! Dustless's sudden move made Chi-Tong very nervous. She saw that Chi-Tong broke Kirom's clothes, revealing her petite body. Damn Empire! Chi-Tong clenched her fists tightly. At first, she thought that Wu Qian was going to take advantage of her, and take advantage of her. It was not until she lifted her clothes that she realized that Chi-Tong's abdomen was pitch black, like a rotten corpse. This was the sequelae of long-term injection of drugs. Yin-Yang release is a very magical ninjutsu. It not only has amazing attack power, but also can create something out of nothing and create a new organ. Even if Kirom's internal organs collapse, and some parts of her body are close to rot, as long as you help her create a new body, she can recover safely, Dustless explained while treating Kirom's overwhelmed body. Especially the abdomen was the most obvious place. The dark, rotten, and terrible epidermis was brand new and condensed into the bright skin. Can human beings and Taiga do this kind of thing? Chi-Tong's heart was pounding. She witnessed Haitong's gradually recovering, and her cheeks were rosy. She had a blind admiration for Wu Chun. The thin young man in front of her could be said to be an omnipotent existence. There was nothing that he couldn't think of, but nothing he couldn't do. I will wipe your sweat for you. Such an ability must be very energy-consuming. Chi-Tong carefully wiped the sweat for Dustless. Looking at the face close at hand, Her heart trembled inexplicably. Noticing that Chi Tong was staring at him without blinking, Dustless patted her on the shoulder and explained to himself, "After so many years, I've already reached the level of controlling and using yin-yang release. It doesn't consume energy." At the same time, Kyurome, who was in a coma, slowly opened her eyes and found the most shocking scene in her life. Chiton's face was close to Dustless's cheek. Her eyes were empty, as if she was possessed by a devil. No one knew what she was thinking. Even because they were too close to each other, they could feel the heat of each other's breath. Chapter 1662. The two looked around, and the atmosphere fell into an unprecedented, strange silence. Is it possible that Scarlet Pupil is fascinated by my aggressiveness? On the surface, he was indifferent, but Dustless was happy in his heart, and he couldn't help but daydream. In the original work, Tatsumi could fool Scarlet Pupil. Dustless did not think that he was worse than Tatsumi. Whether it was strength, charm, or other aspects, Dustless thought that he was better than Tatsumi. Which was more popular, a hero or a bear? There was no doubt that it was the former, and Dustless belonged to the former. Although Tatsumi was good, compared with Dustless, he could only be a bear. At this time, I should take Scarlet Pupil into my arms, and then... Dustless raised a slanted smile at the corner of his mouth, and his hand could not help but reach out to Scarlet Pupil's waist. Boom, boom, boom. Before Dustless completely made a move, the earth-shattering sound of the cannon resounded throughout the imperial capital. Kyurome also recovered from her sluggishness and realized that Dustless was so close to her. Her pretty face turned red, and she instantly retracted her neck. Which blind bastard is it that's spouting nonsense? Dustless turned around, and the roaring sound landed beside him. If Dustless didn't dodge quickly, he was afraid that he would eat a mouthful of soil. At the same time, the new base of the night raid was subjected to large-scale artillery bombardment. Boom, boom, boom. The earth-shattering roar of the cannons lasted for more than 10 minutes before it stopped. The base of the night raid had turned into a pile of rubble. Fortunately, everyone had hidden in the first place, so there were no major problems, and they had escaped this fatal attack. Who the hell attacked us? Looking at the ruins of the scorched earth, Boss Najenda was furious. She was discussing the secret plan to attack the imperial capital with this death. Who knew that the artillery bombardment came from the sky? There is no doubt that this is definitely not the Empire. This death was decisive and sure. She had been fighting for a long time and was very familiar with artillery. Then there is only one possibility. These people who ambushed us. Maybe everyone is very surprised, but it seems that there is only one possibility. The people who ambushed us are the Revolutionary Army. Dustless said something shocking. Impossible. Not only the boss Najenda, but also the other members were full of doubts. They all denied Dustless's ridiculous idea. After all, they belonged to the Revolutionary Army. How could their own people attack their own people? However, Istetha's eyes had a strange luster. After hearing Dustless's answer, she did not rush to deny it like others. She knew that Dustless was not the kind of person who spoke without thinking. After thinking carefully for a while, she decisively stood on the side of Dustless and nodded. All the darkness of the new country was the scapegoat of the night raid, and the Revolutionary Army could wash themselves clean. By the way, everyone seems to have a huge loophole that has been selectively forgotten. The new base of the night raid was exposed. Don't you think it's strange? Chapter 1663. Why was the base exposed? All the members were stunned. Then they nodded as if they woke up from a dream. Due to the sudden betrayal of the Revolutionary Army, everyone was tangled in the issue of the Revolutionary Army for a while and ignored this crucial issue. The previous night raid was attacked by Isdeth, and the original base was reduced to scorched ruins. Now the new base was changed. The boss Najenda did not rush to inform the Revolutionary Army. And the question came, how did the Revolutionary Army know? There is a traitor among us. Stretching, Dustless told the amazing truth, and at the same time, his eyes swept across the faces of the members of the night raid, and a special figure came into view. Tatsumi. At this moment of depression, Dustless suddenly called out Tatsumi's name. What's with your eyes? What do you want to express? Do you suspect that I am the traitor? Tatsumi was angry and yelled at Dustless. Please pay attention to your wording. Remember to have evidence. Otherwise, it is just false accusation. It didn't matter what Wu Chan said, but everyone looked at Tatsumi. What are you nervous about? I just called your name. I didn't seem to say that you were the traitor who betrayed us. Dustless slightly loosened his shoulders and showed a guilty expression. You are insinuating. Tatsumi had been cheated by Dustless so many times that he had a shadow in his heart. We will talk about these things later. At present, we have defeated the Revolutionary Army temporarily. The boss Najinda pinched the cigarette, but she also knew that there was a mole in the night raid at the moment. TSK, you are really decisive, Najinda. Isdeath touched her chin and was quite surprised. She didn't expect Najinda to turn hostile. There is nothing to be surprised about. I can't take everyone's life. Najinda waved her hand, and then all the members of the night raid were dispatched this time. The only difference was that the target of the attack was no longer the decaying empire, but the Revolutionary Army. Time passed by, about an hour or so. The night raid successfully repelled the invading Revolutionary Army, and their own losses were minimal or even negligible. In the evening, everyone rushed back to the base, looking exhausted. Being stabbed in the back by one's own people was not only physically tiring, but also a heavy blow to one's spirit. No one would be able to accept the fact that their faith had suddenly betrayed them one day, and they would even feel resentment. We are in the same boat now, Najinda. Isdeath crossed her long white legs and sat lazily on the sofa. She held a wine glass in her hand and gently shook the red liquid in the glass elegantly. Gulp. Then Isdeath drank it up and praised. Not bad. The taste is very special, and the taste is very mellow. I didn't expect you to have such a good wine in the night raid. Najinda, bring me a few more bottles. This smell is somewhat familiar. Chapter 1664. At night, the sky gradually became cold, and everyone went back to sleep one after another. In Dustless's bedroom, he was lying lazily on the quilt. His eyes were rolling, and his deep black eyes were full of cunning. Who was the undercover this time? In fact, Dustless didn't know, or it was just a coincidence. There was no suspicious person inside the night attack, and it could barely be understood as a coincidence that the Revolutionary Army discovered the night attack on the new base. Hee. It's a pity not to take advantage of such a good opportunity. Dustless smiled grimly, and his cheeks flashed a gloomy, murderous look. If there was no opportunity, he could create it. Dustless could take advantage of this opportunity to kill Tatsumi and put the blame on him. What's more, Tatsumi has this motive. Dustless murmured coldly, and he made up his mind to push all the causes and consequences to Tatsumi. It was better to kill this eyesore. Creak. It was also at this time that Dustless suddenly heard the sound of the door being pushed open, and he immediately pretended to be asleep. And then he saw the hockey spread out like water ripples. It seems to be his death. Even with his eyes closed, Dustless felt who it was from the unique temperament. The closed eyes opened, and the person who appeared in the eyes was Isdeath in pajamas. No, it was too much to say that it was pajamas. Isdeath's white underwear was open. Her proud cleavage was exposed, and most of her two huge meatballs could be seen clearly. What's the matter? You weren't seen when you came, right? Maybe I'll be gossiped about. Also, you're not retaliating against me, are you? So are you ready to be humiliated by me again? Dustless stared at Isdeath's delicate face and asked, You know the answer, don't talk nonsense. Didn't you expect this scene? The day I begged you. I remember you said it last time. Isdeath snorted softly. Did I? Dustless pretended to widen his eyes innocently and scratched his head embarrassedly, as if to say that he didn't know anything. You're too forgetful. Isdeath sat on the quilt, staring at Dustless with her watery eyes, and said, "Lend me your strength, and I can help you do everything you want to do. Is that why you joined the night raid, to get close to me?" Isteth nodded and crossed her arms. "Why do you think I joined the night raid? Don't tell me. Do you think I've been influenced?" This kind of thinking was very naive. The Empire was not a good thing, and so was the Revolutionary Army. The winner could decide everything. Evil and justice are not important. The key is power. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He really thought that Isteth wanted to repent. Who knew that this girl joined the Night Raid Assassin organization in order to get close to him? You are right. The winner can decide everything. The key is that you are just a stray dog now. You don't even have the ability of Taigu. How can you talk about winning? It's too funny. Dustless raised his tone deliberately to attack Isteth. That's why I came to you for help. Isteth blinked and said with a serious expression, "Give me the power to destroy them. From now on, we are allies." No. Dustless shook his head quickly and sneered. "Miss Isteth, do you really think others are fools? My power can give you stronger strength, but do you want to get something for nothing? Don't you think you are too ridiculous? You want to get my power without paying? There is no such cheap thing in the world. If you want to get my power, you must come up with the conditions that I am interested in." That's right. Isteth lowered her head without saying yes or no. If you want to get other people's things, who will be fooled if you don't give bait? What's more, Dustless was not the kind of idiot who had a lot of money. After thinking for a while, under Dustless's surprised gaze, Isteth made an amazing move. The almost transparent pajamas, as thin as a cicada's wing, was cut from Isteth's delicate body. The delicate skin and the body that made people daydream were all exposed in the sight of Dustless. The body that made people commit crimes could be seen at a glance. It attracted the nerves of Dustless. Cough, cough. Dustless was slightly stunned after seeing this. His face flashed with embarrassment, and he reluctantly took back his sight. "Give me power. This body is yours. You can do whatever you want. I will never resist." Finally, Isteth approached Dustless and blew a hot breath in his ear. "You can do whatever you want. I will fully cooperate with you. Since you think so clearly, then I will agree with you this deal." Staring at Isteth's clear eyes, Dustless snapped his fingers, then a strange fruit appeared in his hand. It was the devil fruit, and it was the ice-cold fruit of Logia. "What is this? Don't tell me that it can let me regain the strength of the past." Isteth pointed to the devil fruit with suspicion. "Eat it, you'll get the previous strength. No, to be exact, you'll get the strength beyond the previous. Akiji's ice-cold fruit is far more powerful than the Taigu, demon god's manifestation, devil's essence." Dustless explained, staring at Isteth, and said, "But there is a condition. You must promise me. Otherwise, everything is in vain, and what I said before does not count." "My body? You can take it," Isteth said calmly. The concept of the weak being prey to the strong had already been deeply rooted. For her, the weak deserved to be dominated by the strong. Not this. Dustless stared at Isteth angrily. She thought he was crazy. Dustless walked to Isteth's side and said something to her in a low voice. After a while, Isteth, who understood, had a strange expression. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Chapter 1665. It was no wonder that Isteth was so strange. Dustless's request was to join hands to kill Tatsumi. Does that kind of small character need my cooperation? Isteth was puzzled. She did not expect Dustless to make such a fuss. There was no need to know a small character. After all, he was just a small character. "Tell me." After thinking for a while, Isteth did not refuse in a hurry. "Come closer." Dustless smiled and let Isteth come closer. Finally, he told her his plan. After listening to it, Isteth was immediately embarrassed. "No wonder Tatsumi hates you so much. If it were me, maybe I would die with you." Isteth rubbed her temple and looked at Dustless with a hopeless look. So what? Dustless curled his lips and did not care about Isteth's contempt. He asked directly, "So, Miss Isteth, what is your choice?" "I promise you." After a little hesitation, Isteth gritted her teeth and agreed to Dustless's condition. "Take it." Dustless smiled slightly, then handed the ice-cold fruit in his hand to Isteth and said lazily, "Repeat again. This is the ice-cold fruit of Logia. Its ability is far more powerful than Demon God's appearance, Devil's essence. Its ability is also as its name. It can freeze all creatures or non-matter. The scale is more powerful than Taigu, but how powerful it is depends on the host." "Do you mean this fruit is called devil fruit?" Isteth's eyes were full of light. She was quite curious about this strange fruit. It was the first time to encounter such a special fruit in her life. "Yes, I am a flash person who ate the flash fruit. Most of the physical attacks do not work on me. This devil fruit also has the same ability. It can be immune to most of the physical attacks, and it can grew." However, before Dustless finished speaking, Isteth grabbed the ice-cold fruit. She was afraid that Dustless would regret, so she simply swallowed the fruit into her mouth. "Fuck, aren't you afraid of choking?" Dustless stared at Isteth speechlessly. He did not expect her to act so fast. "Woo woo woo." A strange sound came out of Isteth's mouth. Although it was not clear what she was saying, the general meaning could be seen from her proud face. "What if you regret it? How do you feel? Do you feel any changes in your physique?" Dustless changed the topic and asked with interest. "It's disgusting." Isteth had a bitter look on her face. Her delicate face had turned into a bitter gourd color. It seemed that she had suffered a lot. "You're still complaining?" Glaring at Isteth snappily, Wu Chun scolded. "This is a priceless treasure. It's disgusting." Before he finished speaking, a cold light surged out of Isteth's body. "Ka ka ka." The entire room instantly turned into a world of ice and snow, and the cold aura lowered the surrounding temperature by hundreds of degrees. Not bad. Feeling the changes in her body, Isteth was pleasantly surprised. She lost her power and regained it. Especially when she gained more power than before, she was extremely happy. Then with a slight thought, the cold air emitted from Isteth's body calmed down. "Good control. Is it because you have been playing with ice for a long time?" Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise, and he smiled with satisfaction. Although it is not as good as Akiji for the time being, it should be no problem to surpass him. "Who is this Akiji you're talking about? Is he also a person with this ice-cold fruit ability?" Isteth blinked and asked curiously. "Yes, but to be exact, he is your predecessor. He is dead." Dustless waved and said, and immediately stared at Isteth with aggressive eyes. "I remember you just said that if I let you regain your former strength, your body will be mine, right? In that case, it would be impolite for me to decline." Staring at the fragrant Isteth, Dustless did not hesitate to rush up. At first, he thought that Isteth would resist. Unexpectedly, this girl not only did not refuse, but also showed a different kind of wildness. She wanted to counterattack Dustless and press Dustless under her body. After a short period of absent-mindedness, Dustless naturally would not let Isteth do as she wished, and he suppressed Isteth strongly. The next morning, when Dustless and Isteth opened their eyes, it was almost noon of the next day. What shameless night! The bright sunshine sprinkled into the room. Dustless subconsciously blocked the light with his hand and looked at the outside world through the weak gap between his 5 fingers. Is it noon? Dustless just got up and put on his clothes, but the soft and boneless arms hugged him tightly. "What's the matter, Isteth?" Staring at the delicate face, an inexplicable tiredness swept through his heart. Dustless retracted the quilt again and hugged the plump body in his arms. With his eyes closed, Dustless said casually, "Remember, you have to cooperate with me to kill Tatsumi and push the identity of Undercover to him. This is the content of the deal. I will fulfill it even if you don't say it." Isteth lay lazily on Wu Chen's body. Both of them didn't have clothes to cover their bodies, and they were naked. "I have a new plan." Isteth's eyes flashed with slyness, and she said straightforwardly, "You are too strong. I seem to be no match for you in the end, no matter how hard I try." This is true in all aspects. Isteth finally added a sentence full of deep meaning. Until now, her body was still painful, and there were obvious claw marks on her white skin. "It's good that you know. Holding his head, Dustless smiled. So, speaking of this, Isteth became more sly, holding Dustless's neck. Let's have a baby and use your genes to defeat you. Is this a good plan? Chapter 1666. It's too vulgar. Staring at Isteth's eyes, Dustless mocked her unceremoniously. The idea is beautiful, but the reality is often the opposite. But it's understandable that you can think so. Although this method is brainless, it's the only way out. So be it. Dustless gave a barely good evaluation. His direct descendants would inherit one of his many powers, such as chakra or some dojutsu. Until now, his two daughters were the same. Then let's have a happy baby. Dustless, who was going to get up, was suddenly tired after Isteth's torment. He returned to the bed again and pressed Isteth down. This arrogant woman must not be merciful. When he got up again, it was already sunset, and the sky was faintly dark. These two guys, at dinner, everyone found the abnormality of Isteth and Dustless. They didn't say much and didn't make unnecessary explanations, but some careful people still saw the clues. Could it be? Staring at Isteth's face, Boss Naginda's face was strange. Isteth walked lightly and even swayed. Compared with the indifference in the past, Isteth now had a trace of unconcealable seductiveness. Dustless is really capable. He can even deceive Isteth into his bed. Naginda stared at Dustless and whispered, secretly giving him a thumbs up. By the way, who is the traitor among us? I will absolutely forgive him. Naginda patted the table seriously. Everyone was stunned and sighed that the main dish was coming. Everyone's eyes also looked at Dustless tacitly. Of course it is. Dustless smiled maliciously, and the strange sight fell on Tatsumi again. Gulp. Tatsumi's heart suddenly thumped, and he said angrily, Dustless, remember it clearly. I will repeat it again. Don't look at me with this kind of suspicious eyes. The person who betrayed the night raid is not me. Who else could it be but you? Ignoring Tatsumi's quibble, Dustless cleared his throat and shamelessly pushed all the blame to Tatsumi. The person who betrayed us and revealed the news to the Revolutionary Army is Tatsumi. You're framing me. Tatsumi blushed and refuted. If it's me, please give us a suitable evidence before you say it. That's right. To catch a thief, we must have evidence. All the members, including Boss Naginda, nodded and looked at Dustless, expecting him to show strong evidence. Isteth, take that out for everyone to see. Dustless gave Isteth a look, and the latter nodded immediately. Under everyone's surprised gaze, she immediately took out the decisive evidence. Slander. This is slander. You two are working together to frame me. Looking at the evidence presented by Isteth, Tatsumi was like a furious lion and lost his usual calmness. What if this super big pit fell on his head? He must not admit it. What's more, he didn't do it. Following Isteth's gaze, he saw that she took out a stack of thick envelopes. The general content was the details of Tatsumi's betrayal of the night raid. It doesn't matter if you don't admit it. I have a way to try. Dustless stared at Tatsumi with a smile. He could only take a step back. This thing was just fabricated out of thin air, but it was not convincing enough. However, this was enough. Dustless just needed an excuse. I have an ability to extract other people's memory and put it on you to experiment. Suddenly, Dustless's mouth raised an extremely evil arc. The people whose memory was extracted by Rinnegan would eventually have the same result. Either fall or become an idiot. You could do this kind of thing? Everyone was stunned when they heard the words, but Akame nodded thoughtfully and said without thinking, I remember that Dustless used this ability before. Tatsumi, you can experiment with it. Anyway, it's okay. Experiment? I'm not a lab rat. Tatsumi complained in his heart and did not hesitate to curse Akame. He immediately shook his head like a rattle drum and said loudly, I'm sorry, I refuse. Tatsumi's tone was very firm. Being a lab rat was not this group of people. Of course, it didn't matter what he said. What if something went wrong in the end? And the relationship between Dustless and himself? Thinking of this, Tatsumi shuddered. Although Akame said that there was no danger, what if there was an accident? Don't worry, at most, you will become an idiot. Wu Chen's casual words made Tatsumi feel dizzy. At the moment, Tatsumi was furious. It's easy for you to say. In a word, I refuse. Refuse? A cold voice sounded from behind Tatsumi. Turning around, it was his death, who was extremely gloomy. Don't you understand now? No matter what, you're the most suspicious. Nonsense. I have never colluded with the Revolutionary Army. I haven't even seen their faces. Tatsumi argued, and suddenly felt that he was very sad. He worked hard for the Revolutionary Army, but he didn't even see the Revolutionary Army's face. It was really a huge tragedy. If there are people who are against joining forces with me, is there anyone else besides you? Isdeth held her shoulders with both hands and said disdainfully, After all, Bullet died in the hands of my subordinates. It is normal for you to hate me. Chapter 1667. Tatsumi's pupils widened. He didn't expect these two guys to cooperate so well. The tacit understanding was speechless. It was true that he hated his death because this guy killed Tatsumi. Of course, if Tatsumi knew that his death was actually just an innocent scapegoat and the real culprit who killed Bullet was dustless, he would definitely be choked to death. I want evidence. Again, I refuse to cooperate with the extraction of memory. Tatsumi turned his head and ignored Dustless and his death. Only idiots would cooperate. Extracting memory meant that all secrets would be controlled by Dustless. How could this be? This guy. The members of the night raid looked at each other and were secretly annoyed with Tatsumi's behavior. This guy gave people a feeling that he would not accept any conditions. Hey, Tatsumi, there is no way if you don't cooperate. Boss Najinda threw away the long smoke in her hand and stared at Tatsumi with bright eyes. Boss, do you also think that I am not a spy? I am so touched. Tatsumi was surprised when he heard the words, and his face showed a cheerful smile. Listening to Najinda's words, it seemed that she was going to let him go and stop the absurd practice of extracting memory. At the same time, he looked at Dustless, which meant, look, the boss is still on my side in the end. Favoritism. What's the strength of this guy? Why does Najinda pay so much attention to him? Dustless glanced at Najinda with a complicated expression. Then he stared at Tatsumi for a few times with an unlucky expression. After fighting for so long, I finally won a round. It's not easy. Tatsumi laughed in his heart and had a feeling of exaltation. He excitedly walked to Boss Najinda. When Tatsumi was about to flatter her, Najinda grabbed his shoulder very abnormally. Tatsumi, I know you were wronged, but now is a special time. I hope you can be wronged. So, please let Dustless extract your memory. Najinda suddenly changed her face and said very seriously, Don't worry, except for you who didn't betray everyone. Other members will also have their memory extracted. Huh? Tatsumi stared straight at Najinda. Originally, he had intended to flatter her. After hearing these words, 100,000 crows flew over his forehead. He was in a bad mood and almost lost control of his spirit. I firmly object. Tatsumi rebuked loudly and pursed his mouth with a constipated look. He just planned to flatter Najinda, but she betrayed him in the next second. Dustless, come and work. Boss Najinda looked at Dustless, Tatsumi's feelings, pointed at him, and said, Be quick. The next person whose memory is extracted will be Lubbock. Ha! Don't worry, leave it in 1 minute. Tatsumi's Najinda, and Tatsumi, with Tatsumi, and step. Tatsumi's head was dizzy, and his mind was spinning. What he heard was not 1 minute, but 1 minute to turn himself into a super idiot. In fact, Dustless did plan to destroy this guy's spirit and make him a retard. Let go of me. Tatsumi suddenly smashed Najinda's hand, looked at the glass window, and jumped out without hesitation under everyone's stunned gaze. Catch Tatsumi quickly. Don't let him run away. This kid is guilty. Boss Najinda's face was replaced by a fierce look after the corner of her mouth twitched. Then other members of the night raid, as well as Boss Najinda, all joined the task of arresting Tatsumi. This is really a disaster. It seems that it is not in your plan. I remember that you just planned to turn Tatsumi into an idiot, but this kid ran away. Isdeth sat lazily on the sofa, looking up at the ceiling. The snow-white meatball almost broke out of her clothes. No, this is better. Although it is a little different from my plan, the ending is more perfect. Dustless suddenly smiled strangely and said in a cold voice, "In this way, even if I kill Tatsumi by accident, others have nothing to say." Isdeth raised her head and snorted, "Despicable man." Despicable? Dustless's calm eyes fell on Isdeth's head, nodded and agreed. Maybe, but it is very despicable. But often, despicable people laugh at the end, right? For example, Minister Ernest. That makes sense. Isdeth nodded after a slight silence. It was because Minister Ernest was despicable enough that he lived freely and killed all his political enemies. Do it, don't let them beat you. If you meet Tatsumi, kill him for me, don't show mercy. After the voice fell, Dustless's body disappeared. He turned into a ray of light and went straight to the distant sky. In an instant, he surpassed Najinda and others and followed Tatsumi closely. He chased after Tatsumi and constantly narrowed the distance between the two sides. Today's Tatsumi was not the same as before. The degree of control of Ghost Haunt was also perfect. It was not the peak, but at least he could perfectly hide his breath. After he launched the stealth skill, the members of the night raid instantly became blind. Even if Tatsumi was beside everyone, they could not perceive his existence. Sure enough, the night raid is still not suitable for me. I should go inside the Revolutionary Army. It is more suitable for me. After becoming a big official, I can also change the future of the village. Now that the boss and the Revolutionary Army have parted ways, the Revolutionary Army must be lacking a master like me. With such an idea, Tatsumi rushed to the base of the Revolutionary Army, but ignored the flash behind him. Chapter 1668. The speed of light was incredible and beyond people's cognition. It was not an exaggeration to describe it as fleeting. When moving forward, there would be a huge roar, and the vibration made people's eardrums hurt. Who is it? With such a huge movement, Tatsumi also noticed it at the first time. As soon as he turned around, a slap flew over. Bang, bang, bang. Kakaka. Tatsumi's head was hit a few times by an extremely violent fist, and he could still hear the sound of kakaka. His nose and teeth were broken by the owner of this light. Ouch, it hurts. Tatsumi's eyes were filled with tears due to the pain. He covered his old face with both hands and rolled on the ground in pain. Who did it? Who is it? A voice full of hatred jumped out from Tatsumi's throat. He finally escaped from the wolf's den of the night raid. He thought that he would have no worries after joining the Revolutionary Army. Who knew that God didn't give him face? He didn't escape far before an unexpected disaster came. Tatsumi, you heartless thing. You want to run away after taking the things of the night raid? At least take off Haunted Spirit and give it to me. The light turned into reality and condensed into a handsome face. The person who came had a jade-like face. His gentle face was as warm as the sun, and his smile made people involuntarily open their hearts. Only the cold eyes were as terrifying as the devil. It was not difficult to see that this person was like a smiling tiger. He was temperamental, and no one could figure out what he was thinking. Dustless, Tatsumi was furious when he saw it. His eyes were filled with hatred when he met his enemy. Before escaping the detection range of the night raid, Tatsumi unlocked the Haunted Spirit armor. Now, because of the appearance of Dustless, Tatsumi once again used his trump card. Due to the deep resentment between the two, Haunted Spirit felt the anger in Tatsumi's soul and mutated. The dazzling light spread out. At the waist, a pair of broken wings flashed. They were full of incomplete traces like broken scrap iron. But even so, Tatsumi's momentum was several times stronger than before. Kakaka. The ground beneath his feet also began to crack chaotically. Yo, seeing this, Dustless showed a rare expression of appreciation and complimented, "Your willpower is not bad. Ghost Taunt has sensed your anger and evolved. Do you hate me so much, Tatsumi? Do I need you to tell me whether I hate you or not? I didn't mean to go against you, but you always make things difficult for me and suppress me. Today, it's time to end the grudge." Clenching his fist, Tatsumi's confidence soared. Dustless smiled and said disdainfully, "Do you think you've improved just because you've grown trash wings? Big mistake. Rotten oranges will always be rotten oranges." Swish, swish. Just as he finished speaking, Dustless's figure flashed and pounced over with a strong pressure. Still so fast. Chapter 1669. Pucci. The severe, tingling spread all over his body. Tatsumi's face was as pale as paper, and he was sweating like rain. He felt that his vitality was fading rapidly, and a sense of powerlessness deep in his soul swept everywhere in an instant. His eyes even saw the grim reaper who came to kill him with a sickle. In this short period of time, even Tatsumi's black hair turned white a lot. "You killed your companion. The boss will definitely not let you go," Tatsumi shouted with a face full of hatred. "Soon, we will meet in hell and fight again in the next life. Tut tut, your hope is doomed to fail." Dustless raised the corner of his mouth and smiled. "Kill your companion? To tell you the truth, your good brother, Bullet, was killed by me. But what is the result? I still live happily until now. But you, tut tut, your appearance is really miserable." Seeing Tatsumi was so stubborn, Dustless stabbed Tatsumi's heart with the Heaven Cluster Cloud sword and penetrated deeper. Pucci. The burnt wound was full of burning smell. Tatsumi's flesh was burnt, making a disgusting smell. "Bah, this smell is disgusting. How many days have you not taken a bath?" Dustless looked disgusted and kicked Tatsumi out. "You damn guy, I will not forgive you even if I become a ghost." Tatsumi looked at Dustless with hatred. His scarlet eyes remembered Dustless in his mind, and then he was unwilling to die. "Idiot, there are many people who hate me. Who do you think you are?" Glancing at Tatsumi's body faintly, Dustless's pupils flashed a sharp light. "Amaterasu." Tatsumi's whole body burned with black flames. His body was slowly swallowed and gradually disappeared. Even Dustless did not let go of his taiga, haunted by evil spirits. He destroyed all of it and burned it into black residue. "You are really ruthless. You deserve to be." Isdeth's delicate body flashed to Dustless's side. She looked at Tatsumi's disappearing body coldly. Only this black flame made her feel the fatal threat. "How many trump cards does this man have that I don't know about?" Her bright eyes were even more lonely. Isdeth felt powerless for a deep-sea shark like Dustless, and at the same time, she became more firm with Dustless's plan to make a human being. "I'll borrow your seed to destroy you." Isdeth felt that this plan was quite good. At least it was the only strategy she could think of to deal with Dustless. Go back and say that this guy was killed by the Revolutionary Army, and the taiga was also taken away. Dustless took back his sight. He finally left Isdeth's back. What if I expose your plot to kill Tatsumi?" Staring at Dustless's cold face, Isdeth pointed to her chin and teased, "If that's the case, you will be betrayed by everyone." Extremely bored, Dustless glanced at Isdeth. He said with a resolute tone, "If you want to report me, you will not gossip here. Moreover, compared with each other, Najinda believes me more. I can totally bite back and say that you plot to frame me and seduce me to sleep with you. You're really shameless." Isdeth was stunned, looking at Dustless, who was not blushing and breathless. This guy looked like the kind of person who was used to lying. He was so calm. "It's time to end it. Immediately destroy this decaying transition, and then take you to see a new world." In the ruins of the night raid, in the temporary room. "Is Tatsumi dead? It's a pity that he has worked for us for so long." Hearing the news of Tatsumi's death, Najinda's face was full of regret, but she was not sad. "Yes, he wanted to join the Revolutionary Army, and I caught him. In the end, he couldn't stand my torture. He told us all his plan to frame us, and his body was eaten by the dangerous species. Dustless said seriously and carefully, "It was very bewitching. It was obviously made up, but everyone had a kind of immersive experience, witnessing the scene of Tatsumi's betrayal in the night raid. Humph. A traitor is just a traitor. His death is not regrettable." Mine curled her lips disdainfully. Her mouth was full of disgust and disgust. I was blind. Leonie also had a black face. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth. She wanted to skin Tatsumi alive. If Tatsumi was in front of her at this moment, she might whip his body. I didn't expect him to be a traitor. I really should kill him myself. Akame's taigu was pulled out of the scabbard. I didn't know that the guy Tatsumi was a traitor. We were all careless. Chelsea had a lollipop in her mouth, and the cold light flashed in her eyes. For traitors, no matter who they were, they had no good feelings. Forget it. Tatsumi's matter is over. The next step of the plan is to destroy the Empire. We will arrange the plan ourselves. In the future, the Night Raid and the Revolutionary Army will be the enemy. When saying this, the boss Naginda's tone was full of confidence. Although there were only a few people in the Night Raid, the soldiers of the Night Raid or the Empire were not as powerful as the members of the Night Raid. With our strength, we can completely kill the Empire's army and then annihilate the Revolutionary Army. No force can stop the advance of the Night Raid. Speaking of this, Dustless's tone suddenly stopped. The Empire and the Revolutionary Army were finished, and a new ruler must be needed to control the Empire. There was no doubt that Dustless was the most suitable person. After all, the person with the bigger fist had the final say, but he was not interested in being the emperor. He still released infinite Tsukuyami to continue to destroy the world. A special energy fluctuation appeared on his body, and the room started to tremble and collapse at an accelerated rate. Bang! With a loud bang, the palace turned into ruins. The dark and oppressive room was lit up quite a bit. Looking up, it turned out that a gentle light was descending from the sky. Ayo, ayo, ayo. After a few dozen seconds, the bright sky darkened once again. A black shadow that was dozens of meters tall turned from nothingness to reality, and its mighty and extraordinary figure was exposed to the world. What the hell is that? A group of members of the Night Raid who raided the palace looked up at the sky, looking at the unparalleled height and the domineering temperament. Their scalps were numb. I heard from Dustless that this is the strongest taigu, Supreme Taser. I didn't expect it to have such a powerful power. With such a terrifying height, not to mention that it is a taigu, even if it is a worm, it can turn the world upside down when it moves. Akame and others were horrified. Even if Dustless had given them a precaution before, they were still shocked by the thunder at this moment. The oppression brought by this super monster was too deep. Just a casual glance from him would make one feel as if there was a sharp blade on one's back. It wasn't just the night attack. All the residents of the Empire felt as if there was a huge guillotine on their foreheads. They all ran out of the Empire with all their might. Dustless, is that the strongest taigu you said? Is it also the first taigu? Only the inheritor of the royal blood can open the Supreme Taser. Its appearance seems to be more exaggerated and tall than last time. Looking at the behemoth, even if she saw it last time and fought with it once, Isteth also lost her mind for a while, and her eyes were empty. She didn't know when she had already stood beside Dustless. "Ha ha, you two damn guys, this time you're going to die. You will definitely die, and Supreme Taser will destroy everything." Minister Ernest laughed crazily and even danced like a child. "What is our result? You can't see it, and your current identity is just a stray dog. Don't you think you are too talkative?" With a flash, Dustless turned into a huge light and arrived in front of Minister Ernest. Staring at his fat body, he quickly waved out a few light beams in succession. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. The blood flew, and the ground was instantly filled with purple-red blood stains. Looking up, Minister Ernest's arms and legs were cut off, and the blood dyed the whole ground red. The air was smelly. It seemed to be smelled by the purple-red blood. "Ah, it hurts. "Your Majesty, revenge for me. Kill this bastard." Minister Ernest screamed miserably. The hysterical voice was full of endless hatred for Dustless. "Tut tut, dying casually is too easy for you, old dog. It's death. I will tell you a good way to torture people. Find a large porcelain bottle. Throw Minister Ernest into it, put poisonous snakes, rats, and scorpions in it, and then put honey on Minister Ernest's body, and finally, put tens of thousands of ants in it." Puff! Dustless hadn't finished his words when the old guy fainted. Looking carefully, his breath had disappeared. It wasn't hard to see from his frightened face that this old guy was scared to death. Almost no living species in the sea, land, and air could compete with it. "Bring it on." Dustless glanced at the incoming attack. His right arm was covered with armament hockey. His feet slammed on the ground, and he jumped up and flew towards the flash. Boom, boom, boom. The light hit Dustless's body. Everyone was nervous. They thought that he would be blown up by the energy beam, but the result was just the opposite. Phew, phew, phew. The fluctuation that stopped was sublimated again. The movement that was bigger than before was shaking. The unparalleled light did not fall this time, but rose quickly. How is it possible? It can blow that thing away. The members of the night raid were stunned. Everyone looked at the rising light. Everyone's thinking was subverted, and their brain cells were suddenly not enough. They saw that Dustless hit all the light back with his own strength. Is that guy a human being? Not to mention the power of the beam. The temperature can melt a human being. Even the bones can be dismembered. Dustless actually hit it back with his mortal body. Is his body made of iron that can ignore the high temperature? No. Even if the body is made of iron, it will be melted when it touches the high temperature. How hard is his body? Isthetha's small mouth was wide open, and her mouth twitched slightly. Even if she tried to hide the shock in her heart, she was still shocked and speechless. What would happen if a human was close to hundreds or even thousands of degrees Celsius? Needless to say, this person's end would definitely be nothing. But Dustless was still fine at the moment, completely ignoring the blazing high temperature. Not only that, but he also hit back with an even more powerful force. What kind of joke is this? The little emperor, who was inside the supreme taser, was also taken aback. His eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. Retreat quickly. The emperor panicked and quickly controlled supreme taser, trying to avoid the light that distorted time and space. Although the idea was beautiful, the reality was cruel and ruthless. Supreme taser, this kind of behemoth, is similar to Susanoo. Its attack power is very strong, but its movement is slow. It can even be said to be sluggish because this kind of move is originally used to attack the enemy, not to escape. Therefore, it was inevitable that the Emperor was hit, and he was sent flying by his own move. Boom, boom, boom. Attacked by its own move, Supreme Taser's head was fatally injured, and a blazing flame mushroom cloud rose, and the high temperature melted everything. Half of the majestic Supreme Taser's head was destroyed, and even its abdomen was severely injured, showing a scorched pit, and all the equipment was sunken in. Poochie, suffering such a serious injury, the Emperor inside was naturally not spared. The tyrannical power wave directly made him dizzy, and his head was dizzy, and he could fall at any time. Chapter 1672. Boom, boom, boom. Supreme Taser finally became an arrow at the end of its flight. Under the horrified gaze of everyone, the huge body finally tilted at an angle. Is it over? The members of the night raid wiped their sweat and sat down at the same time. Their tense nerves also suddenly calmed down, revealing a trace of joy after surviving the disaster. It was certain that if it weren't for Dustless, they would not be crushed by the huge body of Supreme Taser. As a result, these towns didn't even leave the remains of the body. Usually when it's over, it's not over yet. The roar of the sky was everywhere, spreading to every corner of the void. Looking up, Supreme Taser, who was originally tilted, actually stood up again at an incredible angle. This is the strongest Taigu, such a huge monster. It may be destroyed by one move, especially my move. The Emperor's arrogant tone came from inside Supreme Taser. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the big mouth, full of fangs, there was a dark red halo again. Is this guy the type that can't be killed? When the members of a night raid saw such a scene, their faces suddenly became as pale as paper, showing fear and panic. The high-density energy ball could easily tear their bodies apart. Do you think you are big? Staring at the huge body with a sneer, Dustless sneered without hiding. If you think your body is big, you will win. You will only lose faster. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Suddenly, the golden energy rushed out from Dustless's body, rising to an exaggerated height of hundreds of meters. A ferocious outline stood between the sky and the earth. The head held up the sky and the feet stepped on the ground, representing everything in the world. This guy, is this his true face? Death looked numb. She thought that the invincible figure of Supreme Taser was enough to cheat. Who knew that Dustless showed his original appearance in an instant? A samurai wearing a Tengu helmet and heavy armor suddenly appeared out of thin air like a natural disaster. This is Liu. Everyone stared at the golden giant with their mouths agape. The giant was over 100 meters tall and was much taller than Tai Se. If one wanted to see the full appearance of this giant, they would have to look up at the starry sky at a 90-degree angle. Damn it, this guy was indeed sent by the heavens to harm the Empire. He can't be allowed to live. The others are just insignificant characters. The Emperor inside Supreme Taser cursed. That exaggerated body was even more terrifying than his Supreme Taser. Supreme Taser's height only reached the waist of the complete Kinsusanu. It's over, Dustless murmured inside Kinsusanu's complete body. He used his mind to control Kinsusanu's movements. Clang, 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 clang. The golden greatsword was pulled out of its scabbard. Glaring at Supreme Taser, complete form Kinsusanu raised the Tachi of light with both hands, and finally slashed down under Dustless's control. Chapter 1673. Time passed quickly, and only a few days had passed. The outside world was no longer suitable for survival. The eternal light of infinite Tsukuyami was reflected on the moon, and everything had entered the end. In the system world, Dustless brought all the members of the night raid in. After all, infinite Tsukuyami had arrived, and all living things had entered the end. It was difficult for Akame and others to survive. I originally thought that you were a true gentleman who wouldn't be tempted, but it turns out that you are a great pervert who is even more absurd than the Emperor. At first, the members of the night raid were shocked by the pavilions in the system, and there were all kinds of beautiful women and all kinds of characters. Demons, humans, gods, angels. There were all kinds of characters, and they were all beautiful. Especially the beautiful figures in the palace. There were countless of them. Cough, cough, cough. Being pointed at his nose by his death, Wu Chan couldn't help but blush even though his face was as thick as the city wall. He quibbled. Didn't you say it before? If you're strong, you can do whatever you want. Why can't I be willful? His death was speechless and found herself speechless. She once said that this was the privilege of the strong. You two, it seems good here. The members of the night raid were embarrassed and looked at his death, who was staring at them helplessly. They found that this strange world was good. There were as many powerful people as there was sand in the Ganges. They also had no temper and were very easygoing. Perhaps because they were all women, they also had a sense of belonging to this sunny world. Well, you guys go around and get familiar with this world. We will be a family in the future. Waving his hand, Dustless ordered them to leave. Originally, the next world was supposed to be Demon's Tale or the Legend of Chin's Moon. However, when he started writing, he realized that he had forgotten most of the plot. Thus, the next world would be a Fate series for the time being. Demon's Tale and the Legend of Qin would be left for later. In another direction, I don't need to help you with this time's crossing. Dustless looked at the system consciousness Ling, speechlessly. He always felt that this guy was attacking him in a disguised way. I don't have the ability to tear space now. Crossing other worlds is even more impossible for me. Someone will summon you. Linger didn't say much. She just smiled mysteriously. Then, her body turned into a halo of light and disappeared. Her personality hasn't changed at all. She still likes to keep people in suspense. Dustless shook his head and sat down in boredom. Unexpectedly, before he could rest for a minute, he felt an inexplicable force fall on his head. Ka. The void exploded with a bang, and a deep black hole appeared above his head. It was deep and gloomy, and, on the other side, it was connected to the bottomless universe. What is this? It doesn't look like a spatial tunnel. Dustless frowned. After transmigrating several times, he had gained a new understanding of space tunnels. Although he wasn't too familiar with them, he still had some understanding of them. This bottomless black hole in front of him was clearly not a space tunnel, but rather an inexplicable contract. Is this the thing Ling was talking about? I feel like something is calling out to me. Dustless was at a loss as he felt the pulling force of the black hole. After a final moment of hesitation, he took the initiative and jumped in. He could also hear strange incantations. Master and servant? What the hell is that? Why does it sound so familiar? In the unfamiliar dark space, Dustless thought to himself. Before entering the black hole, he heard strange words like master and servant. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the dead silent space, a bright light suddenly swept across. Dustless looked over and carefully felt the special energy fluctuation for a while. After confirming that it wasn't a trap, he finally jumped in without hesitation. How is this possible? The Holy Grail War was only a battle between 7 masters and 7 servants. Why would an 8th master and an 8th servant appear now? This is absolutely impossible. As soon as he arrived in an unfamiliar world, there were shocked voices. At the same time, Dustless also understood where he had arrived. He immediately revealed a knowing smile. Dustless opened his eyes subconsciously, and 3 figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Wei Gongqi, this scum is definitely not my master. After glancing at the middle-aged man, Dustless's eyes fell on the 2 female figures next to him. One of them was a white woman, and the other was a blonde girl. Both of them were young, and their appearances were superb. It seems to be King Arthur and Alice Phil. It seems that she is my master. His eyes fell on Alice Phil's head, and Dustless looked at the command incantation in her hand and suddenly realized. Ahem, miss, I am your servant, and you are my master, Dustless said in a very serious tone. He felt helpless. He didn't understand the so-called incantation at all, and the so-called command incantation seemed to be just for show. It couldn't control Dustless at all. Miss. Listening to Dustless's address, Wei Gongqi and Alice Phil were speechless. Aren't hero spirits all ancient people? Since when were ancient people so fashionable? Also, what's with Dustless's clothes? He was wearing casual clothes and sports shoes. The combination was quite reasonable, and he looked very avant-garde. He was even more fashionable than the people in today's society. He didn't look like an ancient person at all. There's something weird about this guy. Saber looked at Dustless strangely. She couldn't tell what was weird about him. Forget it. We have 2 servants here. We have an absolute advantage compared to other masters who are weak. Chapter 1674. Saber was overjoyed, and a blissful smile appeared on her face. Although she did not know how the 8th master and servant appeared, the benefits were definitely greater than the disadvantages. After all, Wei Gongqi was Alice Phil's husband, so there was no doubt that Dustless was also an ally in the trenches. This way, their chances of winning would be much higher. After staring at Dustless for a while, Wei Gongqi frowned and asked, That's strange. What holy relic did you use to summon this guy? You mean the holy relic? Alice Phil could not help but smile bitterly. Who knew how Dustless appeared? She did not even chant a spell. nor did she prepare a magic circle. However, a command spell appeared in her hand out of nowhere, and Dustless, this mysterious guest, also appeared as a servant. Holy relic, Dustless also had a headache. Looking at Wei Gong Qix's questioning eyes, he was speechless for a moment. Then, he waved his hand and said impatiently, "A handsome servant does not need a holy relic." Huh. The three of them were stunned as they stared at Dustless. This was the first time they encountered such a strange, heroic spirit. "Is there something wrong with your head? Or did something go wrong during the summoning ritual?" Saber complained. She was quite dissatisfied with Dustless. Wasn't he mocking the servant that needed to be summoned? "Although I don't know what's going on, one thing is for sure. In this Holy Grail war, our advantage is far greater than our disadvantage." Wei Gong Qixi could not figure out. There were too many unsolved mysteries in this world. If he could not figure it out, then he could only muddle through. "What is your position?" Alice Phil blinked and asked curiously. "Position?" Dustless complained. He was just an intruder who came in halfway. To put it bluntly, he was an illegal immigrant. Where could he find a proper account for himself? Naturally, there was no such thing as a position. "I am." Dustless lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Then his eyes lit up and he replied loudly, "My job is Yindi. Let's get along harmoniously in the future." And Saber, Wei Gong Qixi, and Alice Phil looked at each other. This position meant the end of everything. Forget it. There's no need to worry about such trivial matters. The location of the Holy Grail War. This time is Dongmu City. The few of us will rush over tomorrow. But I've only booked 3 tickets at the moment. Wei Gong Qixi revealed an apologetic expression. The 3 of them were himself, Saber, Alice, and Phil. "Don't worry, I can fly over." Dustless smiled and said politely. Even though he didn't like the man in front of him, he still had to follow basic etiquette. "It can fly." Saber, Wei Gong Qixi, and Alice Phil were shocked. A spirit that could fly? Was that still a heroic spirit? He had never heard of heroic spirits being able to fly. There's nothing to be surprised about. Compared to Saber, I can't be more ordinary. With a modest smile on his face, Dustless said calmly, "In that case, let's have a good night's rest. We'll rush to Dongmu City tomorrow." On the plane the next day, Wei Gong Qixi, Alice, Phil, and Saber boarded the plane together. Only Dustless set off alone, feeling bored. But before leaving, Wei Gong Qixi asked Dustless to bring along a person, Jiyu Mamie. This person was saved by Wei Gong Qixi once when she was young, and they were like childhood friends. "Miss Mamie, it's the first time we meet. Please take care of me." Dustless elegantly extended his right arm with an imperceptible smile on his face. "You get along well." Seeing Dustless's action, Jiyu Mamie was stunned. How is this a heroic spirit? He's no different from a modern person. Not like an old-fashioned heroic spirit at all. "Let's go." Staring at the plane taking off in the distance, Dustless suddenly reached out and hugged Jiyu Mamie. "What are you doing? Let go of me. A heroic spirit is so lascivious. You're a weirdo." Jiyu Mamie, who was in a trance for a moment, snapped back to reality. "Let go." Dustless ignored it when he heard that and retorted with a question. "If I let go of you, how can I bring you along to fly together? Don't tell me you want to hug me? In that case, of course, it's fine, but the premise is that you don't think that I'm taking advantage of you." "You." Jiyu Mamie was dumbfounded. She was speechless by Dustless's words. She could only be silent and let Dustless hug her snake-like waist. Jiyu Mamie's face was slightly red, and then she remembered the task that Wei Gong Qixi gave her and returned to normal. This guy can really fly. Looking down at the sky below, Jiyu Mamie's eyes were in a daze. The charming scenery was panoramic. She was a little obsessed for a moment, and her mind was blank. "Don't call me Guy. I'm a heroic spirit. You can call my job title Yindi, but compared to the so-called job title, I prefer you to call me by my name, Dustless." Staring at the large passenger plane in front, Dustless explained in a rather bored manner. "Dustless, I understand, but you're really a strange heroic spirit," Jiyu Mamie whispered. Although her voice was very soft, Dustless still heard it clearly. It just so happened that right at this moment, Wu Qin's sudden words caused her expression to go grim. Chapter 1675. Miss Juyu Mommy. Anyway, we still have a long time. Let me guess your motive. The bored Dustless smiled and looked at Juyu Mommy. He ignored her expression and said to himself, logically speaking, you should have known that the Holy Grail War would be held in Dongmu City, and you should have already booked the tickets. You are Wei Gong Qixi's assistant, and that guy is very smart. It is impossible for him to forget to book the tickets for you. Then, there's only one possibility. Ignoring Juyu Mommy's stunned expression, Dustless continued to analyze. If you are with me, it is just to test my ability, right? If you think that I am useless, I guess you will set a trap to lure other servants to kill me, and you and Wei Gong Qixi will ambush the other party's master, right? What a cunning and smart vile man. Dustless explained to himself. His expression was calm, as if what he said was just a small matter. In fact, Dustless hated Wei Gong Qixi very much. He was extremely despicable. Of course, Dustless also belonged to the despicable and shameless type. He was not qualified to criticize others, but there should be a bottom line for everything. For the so-called justice, he used his own wife as bait and let Alice Phil pretend to be Saber's master to lure other masters to kill him. Who else could be so despicable? For the sake of justice, he actually used his own wife as bait. Yo! At this moment, Dustless suddenly felt that his head was cold. He turned his head and saw a black pistol aimed at his head. You have such an intense behavior, which means that my previous guess was true. Gently shaking his head, Dustless felt that Juyu Mommy and Alice Phil were not worth it. They were sacrificed for that scum Wei Gong Qixi. Who are you? Juyu Mommy's eyes were cold, and her tone was unfriendly. Pointing a gun at a heroic spirit? You're playing with fire. Dustless replied indifferently as he looked at the void in front of him. I just want to tell you that if you and Wei Gong Qixi have any unrealistic plans against me, you better give up as soon as possible. We are now allies in the same trench. I'm also very interested in the Holy Grail. Moreover, you're just a mere human. Don't you think you're too naive and laughable to scheme against a heroic spirit? Dustless sneered coldly. Don't you dare look down on humans. Takumi Juyu snorted in dissatisfaction. Besides, no matter how powerful or special you are, you're still just a human when you're alive. This guy is really ignorant. Dustless could not help but laugh when he heard that. So this guy actually thought that he was dead. However, most heroic spirits were like that. They were all summoned to participate in the Holy Grail War. Not everyone was as cheat-like as Dustless. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, a series of sonic booms suddenly sounded in front of them. The mysterious object's tail was covered in flames, and it directly blasted towards the flying plane. It didn't matter that Dustless did not recognize it, but Takumi Juyu, who was often in contact with firearms, was shocked. She said in panic, "Oh no, that thing is a cruise missile." Cruise missile? Hearing that, Dustless's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise, and then he frowned. This kind of thing was naturally useless against him. Not to mention a cruise missile. Even if an atomic bomb came, it would be useless. With Saber's strength, she would probably be fine. However, whether or not Wei Gong Qixi and Alice Phil would be spared was a question mark. Boom, boom, boom. The speed of the missile was beyond imagination. When Dustless was about to intercept it, the flying plane was attacked by the missile and instantly exploded into a pile of fire. Qixi! Takumi Juyu shouted nervously and worriedly. The first thing she was worried about was not Saber and Alice Phil. It was enough to prove that the relationship between the two was extraordinary. I'm fine. Through his perverted vision, Dustless saw that in the explosion of the fire, the three of them were fine. It's normal for Alice Phil to be fine with Saber's protection. But why is Wei Gong Qixi safe and sound? That light, could it be the sheath of the holy sword? Avalon? Dustless thought to himself. He saw that Wei Gong Qixi's body was flowing with holy light. He was not injured, but the passengers on the plane could not escape the nightmare. They were all killed by the cruise missile. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Although their lives were saved because they were in the sky, the three of them quickly fell down. Wan Xiang Tianing. His left arm erupted with a strong gravitational force, and the three people who fell to the sea were forcibly absorbed by Dustless. Such a convenient ability, not bad. Floating around Dustless, Saber and the other two were relieved. They stared at Dustless nervously, afraid that this guy would be distracted and throw them down. Although I don't know what happened, one thing is certain, it should be the other masters who attacked us. Dustless analyzed seriously and looked at Wei Gongqi with a strained expression. He said with difficulty, "My gravitational control is average. I can only support 2 people flying. Sigh, it's all my fault for being useless. I'm really sorry. How about this, Wei Gongqi? I'll temporarily put you on the Pacific Ocean and leave with Saber and Aliceville first. You can swim to Domu City by yourself. How about that?" This guy, Wei Gongqi, was furious when he heard that. This is the center of the Pacific Ocean. You want me to swim to Japan? This vulgar and low-level joke was simply too bad. Chapter 1676. Swimming from the Pacific Ocean to Japan? Are you out of your mind? Before Kamikaze could refute, Kuyumamiya yelled, "That's impossible. No human in this world can swim from the Pacific Ocean to Japan. TSK, I'm just a special case. Although I'm using my flying ability." Dustless smiled and teased. "All in all, I can only carry 3 people at most, Saber, Alice, Faye, and you. As for the others, I'm sorry, I can't help." "Is that so? Then you could take the 3 of them and leave." Kamikaze sighed and waved his hand. "I'll call a ship. When we reach Domu City, you must be careful, especially Yin Feng Qi. You must pay attention to him. I suspect that the cruise missile incident was done by that guy. I have a very dangerous feeling. That guy will be the strongest enemy we'll ever meet. No matter what, he's just a human." Dustless pursed his lips. Yin Feng Qi was indeed dangerous when humans fought against humans. However, if he was caught by a hero spirit, he would be nothing more than an ant. "Where's the person who attacked us?" Saber widened her eyes and wiped her mouth. She carefully looked down at the large number of uninhabited islands in the sea below. She could not find where the person who attacked them was hiding. "There are too many scattered islands." Saber smiled apologetically. Although she was a hero spirit, she was not a god. She could not find a person on the ground hundreds of meters away or even 1,000 meters in the air. "Leave it to me." Dustless smiled and said, "As long as all these islands are sunk, no matter if it's master or servant, they won't be able to escape." Ka. As soon as he finished speaking, a high-density energy ball appeared in front of Dustless's thumb. As the force was too strong, the surrounding void was distorted and collapsed. "Who ordered you to use your noble phantasm?" Kamikaze shouted angrily. "Noble phantasm?" Dustless glanced at Kamikaze and said coldly, "If this is a noble phantasm, then I have too many of them." Wang Su's flash. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. With a flick of his finger, the energy ball shot out towards the scattered islands on the ground. Boom, boom, boom. The calm sea surface trembled, and waves that were dozens of meters high splashed. Then the scattered islands in an extremely simple manner. Gulu. Saber couldn't help but be stunned when she saw the exaggerated range of the attack. Even with such a large distance, it was still able to raise an island hundreds of meters away to the ground. The power of the attack was self-evident. No matter what, as long as there are masters and servants on this island, they're all dead meat. Wu Chen's narration was as light as a breeze. It was as if he had done something like eating and drinking water. It was unbelievably calm. Bastard. Wei Gongqi, who regained his senses, was enraged. He glared at Wu Chen. He always felt that this rascal was always going against him. "You've sunk all the islands. What about me?" Kamikaze's expression was bitter. Dustless's flying ability could only carry 3 people at most. Hence, he had to stay behind. Now that the islands had sunk, how could he accept it? "That's your problem, Mr. Master." Dustless smiled innocently. To be honest, He had purposely tricked Kamiyakaze. Goodbye, Kamiyakaze. Swim all the way to Domu City. With a smile, the gravitational force on Kamiyakaze disappeared. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A black shadow fell straight into the sea. Master, are you sure you're okay? What if the other servants attack you? Saber asked anxiously. She stared at Dustless and then at Alice Phil. It's okay. Since Kamiyakaze asked us to leave first, he must have other ways to get to Domu City. Everyone, please believe in him. Alice Phil did not show much emotion. She smiled and explained, I believe in Kamiyakaze. He will definitely be able to get through this. Master, your relationship is really deep. I'm envious of you. Dustless made a jealous expression and immediately pointed to the sea below and said, You may not have noticed, but I, with my special ability, happened to see Kamiyakaze being chased by a group of sharks, Domu City. In an obscure and unknown room, two middle-aged men were conversing. One of them was dressed like a middle-aged priest, while the other was an elegant man in a red suit, Toshimi Nagasaka. Kiri, have you found the trace of the 8th Einer jar? Toshiomi looked at the man in front of him expectantly. Found it. This is the video of that guy. At that time, my assassin attacked him. Yenfeng Kiri handed the saved video to Toshiomi. Did that guy find assassin? While staring at the video with interest, Toshiomi Inaka asked calmly on the other side. I don't think so. Assassin is good at assassination. The 8th Einer jar did not find him. Yenfeng Kiri said truthfully. Is that so? It seems like he's just an insignificant character. Don't worry. Toshiomi was relieved and labeled Dustless as a cheap guy. That's not right. Toshiomi frowned and asked, since he did not find Assassin, how did Assassin get killed by someone else? This, Yenfeng Kiri said helplessly. Although Assassin was not found, that guy seemed to be enraged. He used his noble relic to destroy all the islands. Assassin was also killed instantly. All the islands were sunk by him. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.